Chapter 1095. Eliza was a masochist. Unlin was shocked by this discovery. This would explain why Eliza didn't hate Unlin even though he was torturing her all this time. That was because the pain she had suffered had become the source of her joy. At this moment Eliza was like an unkillable cockroach. She stood up again and materialized a blood saber and a snow saber. She slashed at Unlin in a frenzy. Streaks of red and white saber projections crisscrossed, tearing the mountains and earth into pieces. It was as if winter had descended upon heaven and earth. Ha ha! Why aren't you attacking? Are you afraid of me? Eliza laughed coquettishly as she attacked incessantly. Her crimson eyes flickered with excitement and a hint of anticipation. Are you King done? Unlin was enraged. The endless night sword technique appeared again, turning the sky into a black screen that covered the stars and moon. His sword projection was extremely domineering. With a horizontal slash, it directly slashed through Eliza's saber projections. Then, another slash landed on Eliza's body. Ah! Eliza let out a delicate cry. Her robe was torn open, revealing a large patch of her snow-white skin. A sword wound appeared and blood splattered. The woman kept retreating, but the redness on her face became even more obvious. She panted lightly and said, "What a domineering slash! What a domineering aura!" Unlin. At this moment, he really wanted to shout F***ck. Then, the most important question was, how could he make a severe masochist hate him? The battle continued. Unlin switched from offense to defense again. He was having a headache now. Facing this special blood-tried mighty figure, he actually felt a sense of helplessness. He had no idea how to deal with her. Torture her? She would be very happy. If he didn't torture her, she would also be very happy when she hit him. In any case, she wouldn't hate him. Unlin suddenly realized that if he disregarded the mission and looked at this woman, she seemed rather cute. No matter how he treated her, she wouldn't hate him. Ha 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 ha. What's wrong? Can't hold on any longer? The more Eliza fought, the more excited she became. She couldn't care less about the exposed parts of her clothes that were torn apart. Her attacks with the two long blades became increasingly swift and fierce. See? No matter how many times you injure me, my powerful life force will be able to recover from those injuries. If we fight a protracted battle, I might not lose. Forget it, I'll just treat a dead horse as a living one. Unlin sneered. Do you really think I can't beat you? What comes next is the climax. He glared fiercely at Eliza. I want you to cry. Endless sorrow suddenly surged up, and tears streamed down Eliza's face. Woo woo woo, what did you do to me? Eliza wept bitterly as she defended against Unlin's attacks. Unlin glanced at the system, but there was still no response. Ha ha, why don't you guess? He laughed coldly. Unlin forcefully took a slash from Eliza's blade. The pitch-black sword gleam slashed down again, and a ghastly bloody gash appeared on Eliza's body. Just as Eliza was moaning to her heart's content, the make-you-poop technique was activated. Suddenly, an intense feeling of diarrhea engulfed Eliza's entire body. At her realm, although she had long since abstained from eating, she had still eaten and drunk quite a lot of alcohol during tonight's blood-tasting festival. There were still some things that had yet to be completely digested. Puff! Eliza's back door exploded. Bright red liquid gushed out along with some unknown substance. The woman finally screamed. She frantically retreated with one hand covering her lower body. Her crimson face was filled with humiliation and hatred. Seeing this, Unlin calmed down. Since he couldn't make her hate him by abusing her, then, he would go and disgust her. He would disgust her until she hated him. Abusing someone and disgust someone were actually two different concepts. Abusing someone was domineering conquest and ravaging, while disgust someone was stimulating the other party to feel disgust and disgust. After seeing the hatred on Eliza's face, Unlin excitedly glanced at the system. he discovered that there was still no sign of hatred. This meant that the hatred was still insufficient, and he had to work harder. The make-you-poop technique could only be used once a day. Now that it couldn't be used anymore, what should he do? Eliza used a body cleansing technique. With a furious shout, she pounced toward Unlin again. Ha ha! You're actually doing such a thing in front of me! How disgusting! Unlin laughed heartily. The contempt and mockery on his face became even more pronounced. He didn't hit Alyssa anymore, lest Alyssa got the thrill of being abused. He also didn't want Eliza to hit him, lest she felt pleasure from abusing others. Eliza was a severe masochist, and at the same time, she also had sadistic tendencies. The best method for Unlin wasn't to fight, but to make her unable to exert her strength. This way, she wouldn't feel pleasure, and she would become irritated and even hate him. Why are you hiding? Why aren't you attacking? Eliza's crimson saber was violent and bloodthirsty, while her ice saber was cold and merciless. Even a return to void intermediate stage mighty figure wouldn't be able to dodge the combined attacks of the two sabers. However, after activating the divine inspection technique and Kuan Pung travel, Unlin's movement techniques were as fast as a ghost. He was so agile that it made one's hair stand on end. He was able to narrowly dodge Eliza's attacks many times. Eliza slashed so many times, but not a single one of her attacks landed on Unlin. This made her go crazy, and she almost broke down. At this moment, within the main hall, close to 1,000 Blood Tribe cultivators were lying on the ground. The newly advanced return to void stage mighty figure, Starbucks, was also lying on the ground, barely breathing. Su Xiaolan was dressed in a green dress, and her features were exquisite and otherworldly. She stood where she was, and the pool of blood on the ground made the red carpet appear even more vibrant. Her appearance and demeanor were clearly like that of a celestial maiden. However, to the dying Blood Tribe cultivators, she was as terrifying as a demoness who had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This is too terrifying. She can actually absorb life. She never gets tired. The more she kills, the more powerful she becomes. She really is a demoness. Stop talking, don't let her notice us, the injured Blood clansmen whispered to each other. Even though Su Xiaolan was panting slightly from exhaustion, she was still extremely energetic. This was the core cultivation technique of Xing Tian's Tao of Slaughter. The more she killed, the more terrifying her killing intent would be. She no longer looked at the wounded cultivators beneath her feet. Instead, she silently walked to the entrance of the main hall and looked into the distance. What is Unlin doing? Why is he taking so long to defeat a supreme being of the return to void intermediate stage? Then, Su Xiaolan saw the strange battle between Unlin and Eliza. Eliza attacked frantically, but Unlin kept dodging and refusing to attack. Su Xiaolan was a little puzzled. What is Unlin doing? Also, Eliza's clothes are too tattered after being injured by Unlin. Eliza's figure was voluptuous and sexy to begin with. At this moment, her clothes were like a few rags hanging on her body. It was too unsightly. On the battlefield, Eliza unleashed another powerful saber slash, and Unlin retreated explosively to dodge it. At this moment, a shrewd light flashed across Eliza's eyes, and she immediately fled into the distance. She actually chose to flee at the same time that she forced Unlin into retreat. Want to flee? Not so easy. Unlin sneered coldly. He used Wings of Wind, Kuan Pung travel, and Wind Sword at the same time, and he quickly caught up to Eliza. Then, he started to harass her with guerrilla attacks, such as giant cloud hands or water-type binding snake whips. Su Xiaolan's mouth gaped open. Aren't Unlin's spell techniques a little strange? Why aren't you hitting me? Why aren't you letting me go? Eliza, who couldn't get any pleasure and was constantly being disgusted, finally roared in grief and indignation. However, Unlin gazed at Eliza affectionately. Because I like you. Eliza's pupils contracted, and her mouth gaped open. However, Unlin maintained a sincere smile on his face. He knew that since he couldn't torture Eliza, then he would harass her to his heart's content and not let her have her way. He would even use frivolous love to disgust her. Then, Eliza, who sensed that she was being humiliated and looked down upon, would definitely develop hatred toward Unlin. Unlin felt that this plan was perfect. However, he didn't know that there was a woman witnessing this process from a mountain peak not far away. Su Xiaolan. Chapter 1096. You have to restrain yourself. This isn't the best time for domestic violence. You have to restrain yourself. Su Xiaolan stood at the top of the mountain outside the door. Her dragon sparrow sword trembled incessantly in her hand. She was constantly reminding herself to look at the bigger picture and not be impulsive. Perhaps Unlin had his reasons for doing this? On the battlefield. Like me? Eliza's pupils contracted upon hearing this. Then, a feeling of nausea welled up in her heart. You're so disgusting. It was clear that Unlin's frivolous and disdainful words made Eliza extremely unhappy. She swung her saber toward Unlin again. Unlin activated his divine inspection technique and used Kuan Pung travel to dodge the saber slashes. He didn't attack. Eliza took advantage of the gap between Unlin's retreat to turn tail and run. At this moment, the giant hand of clouds and mist began to slam toward her. Tens of thousands of water snakes coiled around her like tentacles. Eliza was on the verge of a mental breakdown. She swung her sabers toward Unlin in a frenzy. You're not hitting me, and you're not letting me go. What are you trying to do? There was a frivolous and disdainful smile on Unlin's face. I don't want to do anything. I just want to play with you. I want to see you struggle before you die. Boom. Eliza exploded. Disdain, frivolousness, and disgust were different from abuse. This kind of non-violent method completely enraged her. I'm going to kill you. Eliza's eyes glowed with a terrifying ferocious light. Her aura soared explosively. Streaks of white lines appeared on her arms. She had clearly used some kind of mystic technique. Red snow saber wheel. Boundless white light burst forth from her arms. She spun around and waved her sabers. A terrifying frost and snow sealed the space within a radius of 5 kilometers. 2 circular saber projections, one red and one white, whistled through the air with the power to destroy heaven and earth. One saber was violent and domineering, capable of annihilating all living beings. The other was merciless and cold, capable of freezing heaven and earth. Although the intent realms of the two sabers were different, they fused together in an extremely ingenious manner, making it impossible for Unlin to escape. However, Unlin didn't need to escape. He merely pulled out a chaotic alloy brick. This should be Eliza's strongest attack. Unlin sensed danger from this move. These two blades really had the power to injure him. Rumble! The saber light landed on the black brick, and the destructive power caused everything within a 10-kilometer radius to be reduced to dust. The aftermath of the saber radiance even flattened the surrounding mountains. Eliza panted heavily, her face filled with hatred as she looked in a certain direction. He took my red snowblade will head on. Even if he doesn't die, he should be heavily injured, right? Then, her eyes gradually widened as she looked forward in disbelief. How is this possible? A massive black brick appeared in the distance, silently floating in the air. Unlin calmly walked out from the black brick with a mysterious smile on his face. "Thank you," he said with a smile. "Thank me for what?" Eliza had a bad feeling about this. It really wasn't easy. "Thank you for helping me complete the mission." Unlin laughed heartily. God of War heaven-blasting cannon. No living being can stand on the God of War's head. If there is, blast it down. The activation condition is that the other party has to look down on the host, and the host can burn vital energy to unleash this spell technique. However, it can only be used once a day. That's right, Eliza's hatred had already reached the required level. Right now, Unlin had already successfully learned the God of War heaven-blasting cannon. Didn't you want me to attack you? I'll fulfill your wish now. Unlin slowly descended to the ground before looking up at Eliza, who was hovering in midair. This angle was just right, and he could see a pair of slender, snow-white legs under her tattered robe. Tui. No, he could activate the God of War heaven-blasting cannon. All of a sudden, Eliza's hair stood on end as the threat of death surged toward her like a tidal wave. Unlin curled his fingers together, and vital energy instantly surged for over 50 kilometers. At the same time, the sea of vital energy within his body began to churn as he frantically extracted vital energy from his body. The golden ball of light between his palms became brighter and brighter, and its might became more and more terrifying. Under the night sky, the light between Unlin's palms lit up the entire night sky. A feeling of being locked on made Eliza's body tremble. She immediately constructed over a dozen different types of defensive spell techniques and used her strongest dual saber defensive immortal array. Right at this moment, Unlin's hands had already reached out toward Eliza. No one can look down on me. Go, God of War heaven-blasting cannon. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The ground under Unlin's feet instantly caved in with a radius of over a kilometer. Golden light shot out from his palms and soared into the sky. Heaven and earth split apart wherever it passed. It was as if billions of living beings were roaring in indignation and wanted to shatter the heavens. This was a cannon that wanted to blast the heavens. The instant Eliza saw the heaven-blasting cannon, she fell into despair. That energy cannon was really going to blast the heavens, and she was just cannon fodder who had accidentally blocked the cannon's path. Boom, boom, boom. The dozen or so defensive spell techniques that Eliza had cast were easily destroyed. Her strongest dual saber defensive immortal array was also destroyed after a short period of time. Ah! Eliza let out the most ecstatic scream she had ever let loose. The golden cannon engulfed the woman in ragged clothes. Finally, it pierced through the heavens and reached a place infinitely high and infinitely far. It was as if it was a golden pillar that connected heaven and earth. Starbucks, Burke, and Simpson, the three supreme beings of the Return to Void stage, were all stupefied when they saw the cannon blast that seemed like it was going to destroy the heavens. Was this a technique that a soul formation stage cultivator could use? Gasp! This cannon blast is so F***king powerful. Unlin, who had cast this spell technique, stared blankly at the scene before him. He was also extremely astonished. It was as if his body had been sucked dry, and his aura was extremely weak. He could only silently take out a few high-rank spirit pills and stuff them into his mouth like jelly beans to replenish his vitality. Then, he dashed over and took Eliza's storage ring. As for that masochist, she had already been blasted into smithereens by the God of War heaven-blasting cannon. The green-clothed woman smiled. It seems like the mission has been completed. It's about time for you to die. She turned around and looked emotionlessly at the sect leader of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Starbuck. Her dragon sparrow sword whistled through the air once again. Don't think that I'm afraid of you! Starbucks roared in rage. He brandished his crimson sword and stabbed it toward the woman in front of him. His attack was extremely powerful. However, the despair and fear in his eyes betrayed his emotions. The soul formation stage male in the distance was extremely powerful. However, the woman before him was also an immeasurably powerful freak. The holy vermilion bird's cry was like the cry of the nine heavens. An extremely terrifying sword projection tore through Starbuck's sword stab and shattered his crimson sword. Finally, his body was engulfed by the sword projection. In the darkness of the night, a white flaming sword projection suddenly pierced through the sky, lighting up the entire world. The gigantic head atop the mountain peak was finally sliced in half by this sword projection, and it tumbled down from the top of the mountain. Xiaolan's final sword strike killed all the Blood Tribe cultivators in the hall, including Starbucks. The Bone Demon Blood sect no longer existed in this world. Chapter 1097. Following the deaths of Eliza and Starbucks, Burke and Simpson, who were in the sky, started to panic. They used all sorts of methods to escape. Simpson, who was being held back by Yao Ji, found it extremely difficult to escape. Yao Ji was capable of spatial skipping, and her swordsmanship was also extremely powerful. He had only managed to put some distance between himself and Yao Ji, but Yao Ji was already right in front of him. It looked like Gundam 3 was actually easier to deal with since he didn't know how to use spatial skipping. Burke had already made up his mind to use his life-burning mystic technique, Thousand Blood Clone Technique. A viscous black cloud expanded in all directions, enshrouding the entire sky. Thousands of Balks rushed out from the black cloud and fled in all directions. Not only did they all look the same, but their auras were also the same. Hee, every single one of them is me. Let's see how you're going to chase after me. The thousands of Balks laughed in unison as they fled into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Countless photons flashed past Gundam 3's eyes at this moment, and an electromagnetic field instantly expanded for over 50 kilometers. Life source analysis, whoosh. The energy thrusters behind Gundam 3 exploded with a blinding light, and a sonic boom erupted. Its body transformed into a streak of white light as it pounced toward one of the Balk. As it closed in, the superparticle sword in its hand slashed toward the black-robed male with rage. Impossible! Burke's expression shifted drastically, and he immediately whipped out countless chains from his sleeves to bind the superparticle sword. His escape plan was foiled just like that. Don't underestimate the top-notch mechanical creations of the Purple Star. Robots are the best at finding differences, an ethereal voice traveled over from afar. At this moment, heaven and earth suddenly plunged into boundless darkness. His five senses were completely lost, and his divine sense was completely obscured. Burke suddenly felt an indescribable pain tearing through his body, from his head all the way to his thighs. Even his consciousness was being torn apart at the same time. When the stars and moon appeared in the sky again, the male was already howling in agony. Behind him, a male wielding a black sword stood silently. His body was slowly dislocated, and he was completely sliced in half. Blood splattered through the air. Lin snapped his fingers, and the holy vermilion flame surged forth, incinerating Burke's body into nothingness. Gundam 3, hurry and help Yao Ji, Lin said as he picked up the storage ring. On the other side of the battlefield, Simpson was also a spent force. He detected the deaths of the three return-to-void stage mighty figures through his divine sense, and a sense of sorrow welled up in his heart. At the same time, a hint of fear and insanity welled up in his heart. He had already given up on escaping, because he really couldn't escape, and he couldn't defeat the enchantress in front of him. Simpson was struggling. He was waiting for an opportunity. After a short while, Gundam 3 also arrived and joined in on the attack. The pressure on Simpson skyrocketed. His divine body, which he was most proud of, was already riddled with wounds. At this moment, the white figure finally appeared. "Fellow Daoist, listen to me," Simpson shouted. And Lin remained silent as he continued to approach Simpson. At the same time, he secretly commanded Gundam 3 and Yao Ji to attack the Blood Tribe mighty figure with all their might. Boom, 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 Simpson was engulfed in a terrifying photovoltaic cannon. A rather charred man flew out from the center of the energy explosion and shouted, "Don't kill me! If you want to continue to obtain the blood of the sacred ancestor, I have a way and channel to do so." And Lin's mouth twitched. He gave this condition 0 marks. "My entire body is filled with the blood of the sacred ancestor, why would I want that? You King say you have a way and channel to obtain it? You want to beat me until I bleed, then make me lick my own wounds?" A disdainful expression appeared on Simpson's face at the sight of Lin still charging toward him. He was a little dumbstruck as a sense of absurdity welled up in his heart. Not only had his words failed to tempt Enlin, but he had instead been scorned? You forced me to do this. If you don't accept this condition, then I'll take you down with me. Simpson's expression was ferocious as he abruptly stabbed his hand into his own heart. His muscular body quickly wilted, and the blood within his body also evaporated. His body shriveled up like a deflated balloon, and he soon became nothing more than a bag of bones. At the same time, his vitality was also extinguished in that instant. Enlin's expression faltered upon seeing this. Was he committing suicide? No. How could an opponent like him, who was still trying to find a way to beg for his life, commit suicide so easily? Enlin was still in a daze, but Yao Ji wasn't going to waste time on meaningless emotions. She immediately unleashed a burst of dark purple dragon flames at the emaciated corpse. The purple flames were imbued with extremely high temperatures and corrosive properties, and the corpse was instantly incinerated into a cloud of smoke. Yao Ji made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a powerful gravitational force sucked Simpson's storage ring into her hand. Her movements were extremely smooth and fluid, and the onlookers couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The purple flames hadn't even dissipated when a grayish-white projection suddenly extended a sharp claw and leaped out of the flames, charging toward Enlin at an extremely terrifying speed. Appraise consciousness form. Yao Ji's eyes flashed with a white light, and she extended her hands toward the grayish-white projection. Countless pink chains, which were also projections, shot forth as fast as lightning. Ha ha! My consciousness form can unleash power for a short period of time, and it's far more powerful than my previous power. The consciousness form Simpson chortled with glee as he evaded Yao Ji's chains with a ghostly movement technique. Gundam 3 positioned itself in front of Enlin, and it slashed its sword toward Simpson. Simpson's grayish-white projection suddenly became even more illusory and insubstantial. Gundam 3's sword pierced through Simpson's body, but it was unable to inflict any damage. Not only that, but Simpson's sword pierced right through Gundam 3's body and pounced toward Enlin at an extremely fast speed. Soul ignition possession. Simpson's grayish-white projection instantly erupted with a dazzling light, and the powerful power of his consciousness surged forth like a massive wave, reaching its peak condition. His true objective wasn't to perish with Enlin. Instead, he was going to corrode Enlin's consciousness and take over his body. Ha ha! Such a good body, I won't hold back then. A greedy expression appeared on Simpson's face, and he extended his crimson claws in an attempt to tear Enlin's consciousness apart. Enlin was momentarily dumbfounded at the sight of Simpson's fearsome power of his consciousness, but a smile appeared on his face instead. Perfect, I'll use you to practice my saber skills. He had obtained the second-grade immortal pill, the Dark Phoenix Dead Spirit Pill, from killing the Black Fox Empress. This immortal pill was refined using the bone marrow of a mythological beast, the Dark Phoenix. Not only could consumption enhance one's divine sense and absorb the power of dark flames, but there was also a certain chance that one could comprehend the Tao of the Dark Phoenix. Enlin had already consumed this immortal pill back in the West Sea. To be honest, I really do have a lot of faith with phoenixes. His eyes suddenly became pitch black, and everything around him became deathly silent. It was as if a black phoenix with an indistinct face had flown out from his body and was circling around him. The power of the divine Tao comparable to that of a pinnacle stage of the Return to Void stage erupted forth. Come out. Divine Soul Technique, Dark Phoenix Saber. Chapter 1098. The indistinct black phoenix beside him suddenly hovered in front of him before materializing into a black saber with a chilling sharpness. The Dark Phoenix existed in dreams, and its dance brought all living beings to paradise. This was the Dark Phoenix Tao that Enlin had attained after ingesting the Dark Phoenix Undead Spirit Pill. It was an offensive spell technique belonging to the Divine Spirit lineage, the Dark Phoenix Blade. An extremely powerful divine spirit that was comparable to that of a cultivator at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, coupled with a divine spirit spell technique from the Phoenix lineage. How terrifying would it be? Simpson, who had been laughing heartily a moment ago, now looked as if he had seen a ghost. How is this possible? How can your divine spirit be so powerful as well? He roared in shock and horror. And Lin chuckled. Because I'm omnipotent, Simpson. He knew that there was no way out, and his crimson claw slashed toward the black blade. Extreme demonic blood blade. The crimson blade slashed down with a power that was enough to tear apart the divine spirit of a Return to Void stage mighty figure. The demonic sound of tens of thousands of wailing ghosts also appeared at this moment. The dark phoenix blade seemed to sense something and slashed down as well. This slash seemed to have drawn the entire world into a deep slumber. Everything fell into eternal darkness. The wailing ghosts disappeared, and Simpson's crimson claw was also devoured. No. There was a look of horror on his face. In the end, his divine spirit was also devoured by this slash. After the darkness, everything became quiet again. Only specks of starlight shone under the moonlight. There was no trace of Simpson in this world anymore. And Lin looked at the empty void and shook his head slightly. He sighed with emotion. There really isn't a single one who can fight. All right, there's no one else here. They're all dead. Who's going to watch you flex now? A crisp and pleasant voice sounded from behind him. And Lin turned around and saw Su Xiaolan flying toward him on her sword. She glared at him. Not only that, but she was also gripping the dragon sparrow sword tightly. There seemed to be a killing intent. Let's go. Why are you still in a daze? Are you waiting for the other ancestors to come and take revenge? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but remind Lin again when she saw that he had no intention of running away. And Lin returned to his senses and looked at the ruins of the Bone Demon Blood sect in the distance. He said with some reluctance, "Have you finished looting all the treasures? You're done looting? If you're done fighting, then you're going to take the treasure. Otherwise, I'm just going to watch you show off. We've also killed all of the enemies, but there seems to be a Blood Tribe member who used voice transmission talismans to leak the news," Su Xiaolan replied with a hint of disappointment in her voice. "There's one more thing I have to do." And Lin suddenly flew towards the Bone Demon Blood sect. "Hey, what else do you want to do?" Su Xiaolan shouted and followed him. And Lin looked at the ruins of the Bone Demon Blood sect, and quickly found a relatively independent space. Su Xiaolan came to her senses and recalled that this was where the auction items of the blood-tasting festival were stored. She couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "I really didn't expect you to be so kind." And Lin slashed open the space with his sword, revealing all kinds of powerful living beings that were on the verge of death. "I'm not going to save them. I'm going to stab a living being to death." Su Xiaolan, how much hatred do you have? I also want to know. Little Xie keeps urging me to do this. And Lin laughed bitterly. He also had a confused expression on his face. He released a dozen or so intelligent living beings from different races. They bowed to Lin and Su Xiaolan in gratitude and thanked them profusely. Lin finally arrived in front of the powerful being from the Dark Wing tribe. He waved the evil-slaying sword in his hand and asked curiously, "Hey, brother, do you recognize this sword?" The Dark Wing tribe being was tied to a cross and looked hopefully at Lin. However, his expression changed drastically when he saw the evil-slaying sword. This is Splat. The evil-slaying sword suddenly pierced into the Dark Wing tribe being's heart. The Dark Wing tribe being was dumbfounded. Su Xiaolan was given a fright. Lin was also dumbfounded. He scolded, "Holy F***ck. Little Xie, why did you move yourself? You should at least let him finish speaking first." "I'm not interested." The evil-slaying sword's cold voice traveled over. Lin's lips twitched. "I'm interested." The evil-slaying sword ignored him. Lin turned his gaze toward the astonished Dark Wing tribe cultivator and explained, "Brother, You might not believe me when I tell you this, but I didn't want to stab you. The sword moved on its own. The dark-winged tribe being's lips twitched. I believe you, Unlin. The dark-winged tribe being was dead. The evil-slaying sword buzzed as if it had completed a mission and fell into a deep slumber again. Unlin was dazed for a moment before using his divine flame to cremate the dark-winged tribe being. However, his mind was filled with questions. Why did little Xie want to kill the dark-winged tribe being so badly? Also, why did the dark-winged tribe being seem to know that the evil-slaying sword wanted to kill them? Unlin asked the evil-slaying sword a few questions with his consciousness. However, the replies he received were guess, not telling, humph, and a cold and aloof silence. We're done here. Let's go. Unlin asked the evil-slaying sword many times to no avail. He decided to get down to business first. The two of them flew toward Lincoln City, leaving behind a pile of rubble. High up in the sky, a black brick flew toward the east at an extremely fast speed. Unlin and Su Xiaolan sat on the black brick and eagerly counted their spoils of war. My luck is pretty good. I've obtained 3 return to void stage mighty figures spoils of war. Unlin looked at Su Xiaolan sheepishly as he said this. The treasures of the 3 most powerful mighty figures had all been plundered by him. He was worried that Su Xiaolan would be disappointed. However, Su Xiaolan's eyes were curved into crescents. My luck is also pretty good. I've obtained many blood tribe mighty figures spoils of war. Unlin saw that Su Xiaolan seemed to be in a good mood, so he continued to count his spoils of war. He refined the 3 storage rings and counted the spirit stones first. Soon, an expression of ecstasy appeared on his face. This is great. There are actually 8,200,000 spirit stones in here. On average, each person has over 2 million spirit stones. These mighty figures have all prepared a lot of spirit stones for this blood-tasting festival. An elated expression also appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. My gains are also quite good. I did a rough calculation and found that I obtained 14 million spirit stones. Unlin's hand trembled, and the storage rings fell onto the brick in fright. You? How many spirit stones did you say you had? Unlin's eyes widened. 14 million spirit stones. Su Xiaolan smiled with faint dimples. She was clearly in a good mood. Unlin, what the F***ck? Was there something wrong with the way he opened it? He had worked himself to the bone and killed the 3 big bosses with all his might. Yet, the money he had obtained was actually so much less than Su Xiaolan, who had dealt with the small monsters. As if she had seen Unlin's astonishment and confusion, Su Xiaolan explained in a very considerate manner, actually, for this blood-tasting festival, even the mighty figures of medium-sized sects will gather resources to participate in the competition. Moreover, there are also some representatives. It's very likely that they have a top-notch sect behind them. That's right, that makes sense. Unlin came to a sudden realization. Some mighty figures didn't come, but their money did. In this way, wouldn't they have formed enmity with many awesome sects? However, this method of earning money seemed to be a bit fast. Xiaolan, I have a bold idea. Unlin, you'd better obediently stay here for now. If you lack money, I'll give it to you. Chapter 1099. Unlin was slightly moved as he looked at the solemn expression on Su Xiaolan's face. The 2 blood tribe versions of Unlin and Su Xiaolan had finally tasted the taste of sudden riches after experiencing an earth-shattering battle. Unlin was itching to make a move. Su Xiaolan put a stop to Unlin's bold idea with a serious expression. At such a sensitive time, it was enough to provoke a wave of blood tribe cultivators. If they continued and alerted a Dao integration stage supermighty figure, their lives would be in danger. Unlin thought about it for a moment and felt like this made sense. They had offended not just 1 or 2 powers this time. Instead, they had offended a large group of blood tribe cultivators. A Dao integration stage super mighty figure might really come. It was better for them to return to Lincoln City. the two of them continued to sort through their spoils of war. Su Xiaolan didn't have many high-rank spoils of war. The most she had were high-rank spirit tools and high-rank spirit pills. Although they were low-rank, there was a lot of them who didn't have 1 or 2 life-saving spirit pills in their storage rings. With so many blood tribe cultivators' spoils of war, it was a massive amount of wealth. Although Enlin didn't have many spoils of war, all of them were of the highest quality. There were 16 spirit tools, 46 spirit pills, 4 immortal pills, and 1 immortal tool. All of these were truly top-notch items. The immortal tool was obtained from Simpson's storage ring. It was called the Blood Soul Cross. It could use one's own blood and consciousness to suppress the opponent's life. It was an intermediate-rank immortal tool. This was a very practical immortal tool. Unfortunately, Simpson encountered a non-living Yao Ji, and then he encountered Enlin with an extremely terrifying consciousness. He didn't even get a chance to show off his immortal tool before he died. As for the 4 immortal pills, they were all 7th-grade immortal pills. They were called blood-replenishing immortal pills, and they were blood-replenishing immortal pills. They could quickly replenish one's blood and heal one's injuries, so they were very popular among blood tribe cultivators. The blood tribe had a very deep understanding of this type of blood immortal pills, so they were of extremely high quality. Enlin happily put these things away, feeling carefree in his heart. Sure enough, killing and robbing is the fastest way to earn money. He couldn't help but sigh. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. If you always stand by the river, your shoes will get wet. I'm warning you again, please put away your bold idea. Enlin really couldn't hold back his Qilin arm. His total assets were now more than 94 million spirit stones, and he was very close to his goal of 100 million spirit stones, so be it. Let's go back to the Kingdom of the 9 States and find another opportunity to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and wipe out a few demonic sections. Enlin repressed his impulsiveness and compromised. Su Xiaolan heaved a forlorn sigh. The Kingdom of the 9 States has the Celestial Court, the 4 great immortal sects, and the 9 Imperials, so there's no room for powerful demonic sections. All that's left are some small fries. Even if there's a demonic sect with a void return expert, they'll still have to tuck their tails between their legs. Enlin nodded in agreement. At least within the Kingdom of the 9 States, there were no truly lawless villains left. Even if they wanted to do something bad, they would do it in secret and still have to flaunt that they were a righteous sect. Only those who had a screw loose and didn't want to live would openly antagonize the public, proclaiming that they were from a certain demonic sect, or publicizing the evil cultivation techniques that their sect cultivated. It was precisely because of this imbalance in power between the righteous and the villains that it was extremely difficult for Enlin to get rich by eliminating the demonic sects in the Kingdom of the 9 States. Just as Enlin was itching to earn his last bucket of gold. In the core region of the dark marshlands, inside the Ling Shui sect, a cold and elegant woman with golden hair, crimson eyes, and blood-red hair was looking at a piece of information with a dark expression. She was dressed in a white robe with a tight waist. Humph! Someone actually dares to disrupt the blood-tasting festival and ruin my holy leader's grand plan. They're looking down on me, holy disciple Cassidy. Since they're so eager to die, don't blame me for being ruthless. Cassidy crossed her fingers, and there was a fierce glint in her eyes. Men, have the Ling Shui godly battle team investigate this matter with all their might. Ask our tribe's great divination master, Feng Wuyan, to assist in the investigation. At the same time, report this matter to Emperor Yi Deng. After issuing a series of instructions, she dialed a voice transmission talisman to a certain man. Hey Tobias, our holy leader's plan to develop underground forces has been foiled by a certain arrogant guy. You want to go personally? You've only just broken through to the Return to Void final stage, and your cultivation base hasn't stabilized yet, right? The other party might be a bit strong, but even 4 Return to Void stage cultivators were killed. What? You want to bring that thing over? Alright, I understand. The holy leader's dignity cannot be violated. After ending the voice transmission talisman, a cold smile suddenly appeared on Cassidy's cold and elegant face. No matter who you are, you're going to die for sure. Cassidy was extremely confident. This time, she had already set up a trap. Even if the other party was a mighty figure at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage, they wouldn't be able to escape from her grasp. She had initially planned to give Lin a present, but who would have thought that something like this would happen? Cassidy was extremely displeased. She pondered for a moment before transforming into a streak of crimson light that soared into the sky. Achoo! Lin couldn't help but sneeze. You're already at the soul formation stage, but you can still sneeze? Su Xiaolan was a little surprised. Lin rubbed his nose with a smile. Perhaps someone is thinking of me. Su Xiaolan dragged out her voice as she stared intently at Lin. Lin hurriedly explained, I'm talking about my dog. Dabai is thinking of me. Su Xiaolan, oh. The two of them flew toward Ling Can City atop their brick. Although it was only tens of thousands of kilometers away, it would still take some time to get there. However, it didn't matter. The two of them were extremely secretive, so the chances of them being caught were almost zero. In the central region of the dark marshlands, within the divine palace of life, Emperor Yi Deng fell silent upon hearing a piece of news. A suspected blood tribe mighty figure slaughtered over 1,000 blood tribe cultivators during the blood-tasting festival of the Bone Demon Blood sect for a precious treasure? In order to do this, it would require at least several Return to Void intermediate stage mighty figures, or at least one supreme mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, right? As for Dao integration stage mighty figures, if they had attacked in the dark marshlands, there was no way he wouldn't have sensed them. In reality, it was not uncommon for sects to be annihilated for a certain treasure in the dark marshlands. However, it was extremely rare for 4 Return to Void stage mighty figures to perish at the same time. The last time something like this had happened was last year. That was an extremely painful memory. Furthermore, all of the Return to Void stage mighty figures under his command had perished. Wait, last year? Emperor Yi Deng's expression suddenly darkened. Wasn't the end-of-term examination for the students of the Celestial Court? Was this a coincidence, or all kinds of information began to connect, and a certain speculation flashed through Emperor Yi Deng's mind? Boom! A streak of crimson light soared into the sky from the divine palace of life. It tore through space and hurtled toward a certain location. Chapter 1100. Within the ruins of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Great Divination Master Feng Wuyan unleashed a golden domain that encompassed a radius of close to 10 kilometers. 2 blood tribe mighty figures in blood-colored robes stood in the same spot, and an extremely vast and terrifying aura radiated from their bodies. They were 2 of the 3 holy disciples of the blood tribe, Cassidy and Tobias. As for Merlin, he was coordinating all the resources available to the blood tribe to search for the escapees. There aren't many of them, only 3 to 4 people. Furthermore, they have lightning, fire, and sword techniques. They even have some high-level weapons that are a combination of technology and cultivation. Feng Wuyan pointed toward a certain direction in the east. According to the marks on the ground, the direction of the wind, and the direction of the vital energy surge, they've most likely headed in that direction. The east? There don't seem to be any strongholds of large forces in that direction. Cassidy's brows furrowed slightly. Rumble, another rumble erupted from the sky. A crimson light filled the entire sky. A man in a blood-colored imperial robe appeared from the clouds. He looked down at the marks on the ground with an indifferent expression, and his power of the divine Tao erupted forth without reservation. Emperor Yi Deng. Tobias bowed slightly. Cassidy, holy disciple Tobias. Emperor Yi Deng also nodded in greeting. The status of the holy disciples was extremely high, and they were almost comparable to Tao integration stage blood tribe emperors. Thus, they treated each other as equals, and there was no difference in status. Fengwian, who was only at the return to void final stage, bowed respectfully toward the Emperor in the sky. After combining the information they had received, they flew toward a certain direction at the same time. Cassidy transmitted her voice to Tobias. Tobias, why is Emperor Yi Deng so enthusiastic about this matter? He rushed here without any hesitation, as if he's afraid that the culprit will escape. Is he hiding something from us? Tobias nodded. Could it be someone that Emperor Yi Deng knows? Or is it an enemy of his? However, what is the basis of his deduction? He didn't seem to have received much information at the time. It is indeed rare for him to rush here so quickly. However, it doesn't matter as long as the result is the same. Anyone who obstructs the holy leader's plan must die. At this moment, in the western region of the dark marshlands, Unlin was flying on his brick at an extremely fast speed. I have a bad feeling about this, Su Xiaolan suddenly said. It's as if there are enemies approaching us. Don't worry, it's just destroying a layer of the Bone Devil blood sect. Setting aside whether or not they'll be able to detect us, even if they do, we'll still be able to hold our own against mighty figures at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. Unlin offered words of consolation. What if it's a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure? Su Xiaolan asked. Dao integration stage, super mighty figures aren't that easy to mobilize. Big shots like them would definitely plan carefully and think about it before deciding whether to make a move or not. When that time comes, we'll have already escaped back to the Kingdom of the Nine States. Who will be able to track us down? Unlin was confident in his victory. Then, in the distant horizon, boundless red clouds suddenly appeared. Unlin, look behind us! Su Xiaolan exclaimed. Unlin had already sensed it with his powerful divine sense. He couldn't help but gasp. There's no need to look anymore. Hurry, crush the jade talisman of the Celestial Court and ask for reinforcements. Use the highest grade jade talisman. Su Xiaolan immediately crushed the jade talisman and unleashed her aura to lock onto the enemy's location. What rank is the enemy? She asked urgently. Unlin spoke with difficulty. Dao integration stage. Do I have the mouth of a crow? Su Xiaolan was on the verge of tears. Don't say that. My mouth is poisonous. Unlin was also on the verge of a mental breakdown. F***ck. He had just said that a Dao integration stage super mighty figure wouldn't be able to attack so decisively, and the enemy immediately pounced toward them? Furthermore, they had easily locked onto their location. It felt like they knew that they would run toward them. Could it be that the Dao integration stage super mighty figure had guessed something? Unlin unleashed his divine sense to the fullest, and he could sense the immense pressure emanating from the red clouds in the distance. That power was extremely vast, and it was imbued with an unstoppable might and hostility. It was getting closer and closer. A majestic voice traveled over from the distance. I'll give you 10 seconds to surrender, and I'll grant you a more comfortable death. Rumble. Red clouds began to spread over the entire sky, and a rich stench of blood permeated the entire space. A man in an imperial robe with blood dragons leaped toward them at an extremely fast speed. As expected, he was a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Su Xiaolan's features paled slightly, and her heart rate also began to accelerate. You want to leave after killing several return to void stage super mighty figures of our blood tribe? Do you really think that you can come and go as you please in the dark marshlands? Another pleasant voice traveled over. 3 blood tribe super mighty figures began to appear behind Emperor Yi Deng. 2 of them wore white holy disciple robes, while 1 wore a crimson golden robe. They were none other than the blood tribe holy disciples, Cassidy and Tobias, as well as the great divination master, Fengwian. Unlin and Su Xiaolan turned to look at the majestic Cassidy and Tobias, who had suddenly appeared behind them. Cassidy and Tobias also saw the frantically fleeing Enlin and Su Xiaolan. The ferocious Cassidy and Tobias were dumbstruck. Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who wore grave and panicked expressions, were also dumbstruck. This scene, in their eyes, was so absurd. Was there something wrong with this? Cassidy's eyes widened. The enemy that she was desperately pursuing to obstruct the Holy Leader's plan was actually the Holy Leader herself? Enlin was also momentarily dazed by the scenes unfolding before him. The enemy that was desperately pursuing me was actually my servant? What a joke. So you're the ones who killed Buck and Starbucks of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Simpson of the Heavenly Scorpion sect, and Eliza of the Red Snow sect? Emperor Yi Deng's eyes glowed with a divine light as he spoke in a thunderous voice. He made a grabbing motion with one hand, and the space within a radius of 50 kilometers was sealed by an extremely terrifying spatial power. This was a cage created by a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had nowhere to run. Huh? What Buck? What are you talking about, senior? I'm just an ordinary soul formation stage cultivator. Enlin came to his senses and spoke with a panicked expression. That's right, we're just cultivators sent here by the humans to survey the terrain. Su Xiaolan immediately understood what Enlin was implying, and she began to spout nonsense to stall for time. Right now, their only hope of survival was to stall for time and wait for reinforcements from the Celestial Court. Emperor Yi Deng's brows furrowed. Judging from the cultivation bases of the two cultivators before him, they were indeed at the soul formation stage. This couldn't be faked. Two soul formation stage cultivators were able to kill 4 return to void stage cultivators and annihilate over 1,000 blood tribe cultivators? This was a bit absurd. There was practically no possibility of this happening. Could it be that he had found the wrong people? No. Last year, it was said that his son also suffered a loss at the hands of a strangely strong cultivator in the deity transformation realm. Furthermore, the identity of that soul formation stage cultivator had already been verified. That cultivator was most likely also the murderer of his son. It's all connected. All of the clues have been connected. No wonder this man looks so familiar. Emperor Yi Deng roared in rage. So it's you, Enlin. Enlin. Chapter 1101. Emperor Yi Deng had finally seen through Enlin's disguise. Everything pointed toward Enlin. He was the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect. He was only at the soul formation stage, but he was able to fight against return to void final stage mighty figures. That's right, if it was him, then everything made sense. A terrifying crimson aura swept forth again, causing the space around them to twist and crack. Enlin and Su Xiaolan's breathing faltered at the same time, and their bodies instantly tensed up as they stared intently at Emperor Yi Deng. Although Emperor Yi Deng didn't have any evidence to prove his suspicions, he would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person escape. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had to die here. Right at this moment, an enraged roar suddenly sounded. So you're Enlin. You dared to kill my brother Simpson. Today, I'm going to avenge my fallen brother. Tobias roared. He raised his hand and summoned a crimson jade seal with a divine seal on it. This was a relic of the Blood Patriarch that he had obtained after progressing to the Return to Void final stage in the Holy Land of the Blood Patriarch, the Divine Heaven Sealing Seal. It was also a mystic treasure that he had planned to use to kill mighty figures. Demonic slaughter space. Tobias roared as he attacked first. The crimson jade seal suddenly expanded, and the aura of the Blood Patriarch erupted forth. Tobias charged toward Enlin atop the Divine Heaven Sealing Seal. Cassidy also let loose an enraged roar as she stabbed her sword toward Enlin. Be *starred. Give me back my bestie Eliza's life. Boom. A crimson halo imbued with extremely terrifying spatial power burst forth from the Divine Heaven Sealing Seal before enshrouding Tobias, Cassidy, Enlin, and Su Xiaolan. I'm invincible in my demonic slaughter space. Tobias chortled with glee. In the blink of an eye, the spatial power of the mystic treasure erupted, and all four of them were sucked into the divine heaven-sealing seal at the same time. Emperor Yi Deng stared at the empty space in front of him and the divine heaven-sealing seal, and he faltered momentarily before flying into a rage. Have those two gone insane? I can kill them with a single slap if I leave them outside. However, he could understand the actions of the two chosen. After all, the deceased Alyssa and Simpson did indeed have some ties with Cassidy and Tobias. As for whether they were brothers or best friends, he didn't know. However, it was understandable that he was eager to take revenge with his own hands. Idiot! Without Tobias activating the divine heaven-sealing seal, even Emperor Yi Deng wouldn't be able to enter the demonic slaughter space. He could only let loose a string of curses before continuing to idle around. That's right, Emperor Yi Deng could only wait outside like an idiot for the outcome of the battle inside. Beside the great emperor was the great divination master, Feng Huiyan. He was also at a loss throughout the entire process. The development of the situation was a little out of his expectations. Meanwhile, within the demonic slaughter space, this was a space of death where the sky was dark and the ground had turned into a sea of blood. Dense blood chi and demonic chi filled the space. The owner of this space could borrow the power of the demonic slaughter space to continuously suppress and kill the living beings that were sucked into this space. However, at this moment, the creature that was sucked into this space was sitting on a chair, enjoying the leg massage from the owner of this space. Tobias, your forceful intervention was very clever and allowed you to temporarily evade Emperor Yi Deng's attack. However, don't think that just because you're giving me a massage now, it's time for you to explain to me what's going on, right? Unlin harumphed coldly. Tobias silently turned toward Cassidy. A faint blush appeared on Cassidy's beautiful face, and a rare expression of embarrassment appeared on her face as she explained, The person that I prepared for you was suddenly killed, so I'm very angry, Tobias admitted. I was the one who wanted to avenge you at all costs. Cassidy pursed her lips with an aggrieved and self-reproachful expression. I was the one who found great divination Master Feng Huiyan and Emperor Yi Deng. Unlin. He was very touched by the loyalty of these two people. So in order to avenge Unlin, you tried your best to hunt down Unlin? Su Xiaolan was astonished. Cassidy and Tobias nodded awkwardly but politely. Unlin covered his face with his hand. What the F***ck is going on? Not only was he being screwed over by his beast pets and disciple, but now even his servant was screwed over. They were pushing him directly into the ranks of Tao integration stage super mighty figures. What the F***ck was he supposed to do now? Cassidy's eyes glistened with a bright blush. But, holy leader, isn't this a type of fate? To think that we would be able to meet under such circumstances. This is simply too miraculous. Unlin's lips twitched. Do you have some kind of misunderstanding about the word miraculous? This is an ill-fated fate. Do you understand what ill-fated fate is? We're going to die here. That won't happen, holy leader. I won't let you die here even if I have to give up my life. Cassidy patted her massive chest with a solemn expression. Holy leader, my divine heaven-sealing seal is an artifact left behind by the Blood Patriarch. Without my permission, even Emperor Yi Deng won't be able to force his way into its demonic slaughter space. We can stall for time here. Tobias also offered words of consolation. How long can we stall for? 20 minutes. Unlin heaved a sigh of relief. 20 minutes should be enough. The powerful beings of the Celestial Court should be able to get here during this time. This mystic treasure of mine is very special. It can isolate all auras. Even the emperors of the Celestial Court might not be able to detect the location of the aura released by you after you crush the distress talisman, Tobias suddenly said. Unlin felt like he had been scammed again. But don't worry, The emperors of the celestial court should be able to detect the location of your aura at the very last moment, so they should be able to track you here. Tobias hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but ask, I have a question. Can the divine heaven sealing seal be taken away? This was a very important question. Tobias, normal people can't. However, mighty figures who have attained the power of the divine Tao can forcibly take it away, but they won't be able to store it in their storage ring. Su Xiaolan, Unlin, so you're saying that we can only wait and see if Emperor Yideng is retarded? What if he has some intelligence and moves the divine heaven sealing seal somewhere else? Then the emperors of the celestial court won't be able to locate us? Unlin's expression darkened. Tobias nodded. You could say that. Everyone fell silent again. Gambling on the intelligence of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Was there any hope? Xiaolan, I love you. Unlin, I love you too. Unlin and Xiaolan embraced each other tightly, enjoying the final moments of their lives. Cassidy and Tobias were also extremely moved by this scene. It was as if they were going to part forever. Holy Leader, I love you too. Cassidy was extremely emotional. Holy Leader, I love you too. Tears welled up in Tobias' eyes. Piss off. Unlin didn't want to speak to them anymore, and he glowered at them. Chapter 1102. Outside the demonic slaughter space, the divine heaven sealing seal revolved in the air, emanating a faint red glow. 10 minutes had passed since Tobias, Unlin, and the others had entered the demonic slaughter space. Great Divination Master Feng Wuyan couldn't help but interject, Emperor Yideng, should we move the divine heaven sealing seal to another location? What if those two humans sent a signal earlier? Emperor Yideng harumphed coldly. Do you think I haven't thought of this possibility? Those two humans have fallen into the demonic slaughter space, and with the powers of holy disciples Tobias and Cassidy, they're dead for sure. He slowly pulled out a pitch-black spike, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. As for why I'm still here, it's because I'm waiting for that emperor to come. Ever since I speculated that this matter has something to do with my son, Layden, I've prepared something good for them. It's time to settle the score from last time. Emperor Yideng's eyes were as cold as glaciers that would never melt. Emperor Tian Huang, if you come today, even if I don't kill you, I'll make sure you lose a piece of flesh. Layden's death might have something to do with Enlin and the others. However, it was definitely related to Emperor Tian Huang. He was the one who had severely wounded Layden, and he was the one who had interfered when Emperor Yideng was avenging his son. As a result, Emperor Yideng didn't even have a chance to confirm the identity of the person who had killed his son. He had already made a mental note of this. Now was the time for him to exact his revenge. He's here. Emperor Yideng seemed to have sensed something, and he looked toward the horizon. Heaven and earth rumbled incessantly. A huge rift was suddenly torn open in the sky that was filled with red clouds. A figure stepped through the air, and the red clouds scattered in his wake. No, it's not Emperor Tian Huang. Emperor Yideng's expression shifted slightly. This aura is even more terrifying than Emperor Tian Huang's. It's as if it represents the will of the heavens. Dong. The sound of a large bell reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The red clouds were completely scattered by a mighty sound wave. The return to void final stage Feng Wuyan trembled in fear. He stared blankly at the white figure in the sky, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It's you, Celestial Dharch. Emperor Yideng's eyes widened. Long time no see, Emperor Yideng. I'm very touched that you intentionally stayed here to wait for me. The Celestial Dharch strode over with a warm smile on his face, traversing dozens of kilometers with each step. Emperor Yideng roared with rage in his heart. Who the F***ck is waiting for you? I'm waiting for Emperor Tian Huang. Speaking of which, wasn't Emperor Tian Huang in charge of the Dark Marshlands? Why wasn't he the one who came? Emperor Yi Deng repressed the frustration in his heart and forced a smile onto his face. Are you that free, celestial Dharch? Such a small matter actually alarmed you to come personally? He was the boss of the celestial court. I ambushed a lowly general, but your general didn't come. Instead, an emperor came to confront me. What the hell is this? Am I that unlucky? I've been cooped up in the celestial court for far too long, so I came out for some fresh air, the celestial Dharch replied with a smile. There was no way he was going to tell Emperor Tian Huang that he was the one who had come to stop Emperor Tian Huang. This was the end of semester examination, after all. It went without saying that this enemy had to have been summoned by Enlin. With Enlin's penchant for attracting hatred, his opponents were definitely going to become more and more fearsome. For safety's sake, the Celestial Dharch decided to come in person to eliminate all obstacles. Thus, Emperor Yi Deng's long-awaited plan was foiled. Emperor Yi Deng had used a secret weapon against the Celestial Dharch? Only an idiot would do something like that. Whether or not he could defeat the Celestial Dharch was one thing, but his enemy wasn't him, so there was no need to offend such a terrifying mighty figure. Are you a little disappointed? It's all right. If you want to fight, I can spar with you. The Celestial Dharch clasped one hand behind his back and splayed the other in front of him with a calm expression. Emperor Yi Deng's face convulsed slightly. No, I'm waiting for someone. The Celestial Dharch turned toward the divine heaven sealing seal with a smile. Are they in there? Emperor Yi Deng's mood was finally lifted upon hearing this. That's right. 2 of our holy disciples are currently sparring with the prodigies of your celestial court. I'm really looking forward to the outcome. One of them was at the pinnacle of the Return to Void intermediate stage, while the other was at the Return to Void final stage. Furthermore, they had the power boost from the demonic slaughter space. How could they lose against 2 soul formation stage cultivators? Even a top-rate mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage would die here. So what if you, the Sky Emperor, are here? If you can't enter the demonic slaughter space, it's a wasted trip. At most, I'll let you bring back 2 corpses. The Celestial Dharch ignored Emperor Yi Deng's smug expression. In any case, he was confident that Enlin would be able to secure victory as long as his opponent wasn't a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. A few minutes later, the divine heaven ascension seal began to tremble. Rumble. A red circle of light appeared and expanded. Powerful spatial energy began to appear. The 2 emperors stared at the divine heaven sealing seal. A smile appeared on Emperor Yi Deng's face, while the Celestial Dharch wore an expectant expression. One figure after another appeared from the red halo. Emperor Yi Deng's smile gradually congealed on his face, and the Celestial Thearcha's mouth also gaped open in shock. 4 figures appeared in their field of vision, but 2 of them were in extremely dire straits. They were the 2 Blood Tribe holy disciples that Emperor Yi Deng was extremely optimistic about. Cassidy and Tobias were both riddled with wounds, and their bodies were bound by countless silver chains. There was a dark red cross behind them, which was exuding an extremely terrifying restrictive power. This was the intermediate rank immortal tool that Enlin had just obtained, the Blood Soul Cross. This immortal tool could use its user's blood and the power of their consciousness to suppress their enemies. Even though Cassidy and Tobias had licked up all of their blood, the Blood Soul Cross was still able to unleash an extremely powerful restrictive power. How did you lose? Emperor Yi Deng was in complete disbelief. He was waiting for the 2 holy disciples to slay the 2 enemies before swaggering off into the distance. What was going on now? The 2 holy disciples had been captured? Enlin is simply too powerful. He has a mystic technique that can instantly erase a person's power. We were defeated by this power, Tobias explained with an indignant expression. Emperor Yi Deng fell silent, but his mind was racing. Was this an extremely powerful omnidirectional silence spell technique? It looked like he would have to prepare some high-rank spatial isolation spell techniques in order to nullify Enlin's uncanny spell technique. It was better to be safe than sorry. He would remember this message. Ha ha! As expected of the elites of our celestial court. Well done. The celestial Tharch couldn't help but praise with a relaxed smile on his face. Everyone heaved a light sigh of relief upon seeing the celestial Tharch. They had found a backer. Taking Cassidy and Tobias as hostages was the worst possible outcome. Their enemies were simply too powerful, and they could easily capsize their boat. Getting Papa of the Celestial Court to save them was the best course of action. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Cassidy, and Tobias all turned toward Emperor Deng with peculiar expressions. How could there be such an idiot in this world? Chapter 1103. Back in the demonic slaughter space, Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Cassidy, and Tobias all thought that Emperor Deng wouldn't be stupid enough to stay put. However, reality gave them a cruel slap to the face. Emperor Deng really did stay put and wait obediently. He didn't forcibly move the divine heaven sealing seal. Thus, the mighty figures of the celestial court came to their rescue, and Lin and the others were all touched by Emperor Deng's benevolent and considerate actions. Emperor Deng discovered that everyone was looking at him with a peculiar expression, and he immediately flared up with rage. What are you looking at? You think you can read my mind? Release the holy disciples at once. Only then did Enlin realize that he was still holding Cassidy and Tobias hostage. Now that the celestial Tharch was here, there wasn't much point in holding them hostage. The celestial Thearcha's eyes lit up at the sight of Cassidy and Tobias. These two were Enlin's servants. So that's how it is. What a coincidence. The celestial Tharch felt like he had to play along with Enlin and the others, so he immediately stepped forward and positioned himself in front of Enlin and the others. Ha ha! As expected of the small war gods of the celestial court. Even the two holy disciples of the blood tribe have been subdued by you. We've really struck gold this time. Emperor Deng glowered at him. Celestial Tharch, release them at once. Those are the holy disciples of our tribe. Do you really want a war to break out between the blood tribe and the human race? The importance of the holy disciples was unfathomable. They were chosen by the blood patriarch, and to a certain extent, they could even be considered as direct descendants of the blood patriarch. If Emperor Deng encountered the two holy disciples and was killed or abducted right under his nose, not only would his reputation plummet, he might even be held accountable by the other emperors. These two holy disciples tried to kill me in the past, so why are they letting me go just like that? Enlin chuckled coldly as he pressed his evil-slaying sword against Cassidy's slender neck. Emperor Deng could tell what Enlin was implying, and he gritted his teeth. All right, tell me, what do you want in exchange for their release? Hearing this, Enlin pondered for a moment before transmitting his voice to the celestial Tharch. I'm short on money. This matter had to be spoken by the person with the most authority here. The celestial Tharch instantly understood, and he chuckled as he replied, 10 million spirit stones per head. Hand it over now. You. Emperor Deng's eyes widened, and the space around him trembled with rage. This is daylight robbery. Ha ha ha. Could it be that the head of a holy disciple isn't even worth 10 million spirit stones? The celestial Thearcha's mocking smile did not diminish in the slightest. His smile struck Emperor Deng with a sense of humiliation. The head of a high and mighty holy disciple of the blood tribe was indeed worth 10 million spirit stones. If the holy disciples were being looked down upon, then he, the emperor of the blood tribe, would also be devalued. He really couldn't accept this injustice. All right, I agree. Emperor Deng heaved a long sigh. He had initially wanted to say that the storage rings of the two holy disciples were still here, so they could be used as spoils of war. Why did he have to pay? However, if he were to say that, he would most likely lose all of his dignity as a blood tribe emperor, Emperor Yi Deng pulled out 2,000 vital stones from his storage ring with a pained expression before tossing them toward the celestial Dharch. The celestial Dharch didn't even look at them before tossing them to Enlin. Take them as payment for your service. He didn't even take a second glance at something worth 20 million spirit stones. Instead, he tossed it to Enlin as if it were a tip. Compared to Emperor Yi Deng, the difference between him and Emperor Yi Deng was clear to see. Emperor Yi Deng was seething with rage. He was the one who had to bleed, but the celestial Dharch was the one who had to flex. Enlin was also filled with admiration as he humbly tried to emulate the celestial Thearcha's disposition. He accepted the 20 million spirit stones with an elated expression. His target of 100 million spirit stones had been achieved. He really didn't think that his underling would be able to play such an important role in a life-and-death situation like this. He was very pleased. Thinking about it from another perspective, Cassidy and Tobias still loved him. They had traveled such a long distance to become his hostages, then swindled Emperor Yi Deng out of a ransom of 20 million spirit stones. What was this? She was obviously here to give him warmth. Enlin couldn't help but burst into laughter with this in mind. Emperor Yi Deng's eyes burned with boundless fury upon seeing Enlin's expression. Now, why aren't you releasing our holy disciples? Enlin's heart jolted with shock upon seeing Emperor Yi Deng's expression, and he transmitted his voice to the celestial Dharch. I don't feel safe. The celestial Dharch instantly understood, and he turned to Emperor Yi Deng with a smile. Not yet. In order to ensure the safety of our celestial court's members, you have to swear a Dao Heart oath that you won't seek revenge on Enlin in the future. That's impossible. I must avenge my son. Emperor Yi Deng roared with rage. The power of the divine Dao began to surge within his body, and he was clearly going to fight with all his might. Enlin transmitted his voice to the celestial Dharch. Let me progress to the return to void stage first, and then he can seek revenge however he wants. A faint smile appeared on the celestial Thearcha's face as he looked at Emperor Yi Deng. All right, I'll give you a chance to seek revenge. You don't have to wait too long either. Let Enlin progress to the return to void stage first, and you can seek revenge however you want. We won't blame you for bullying the weak. How about that? Emperor Yi Deng was fuming with rage. He was flexing again. All right. It's settled then. Emperor Yi Deng swore a Dao Heart oath that he wouldn't attack Enlin before he reached the return to void stage. Will that really be fine? He's a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. The celestial Dharch transmitted his voice to Enlin. Don't worry, I've fought more than 1 or 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures. After I reach the return to void stage, I'll be able to kill 1 or 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures as practice. Enlin's expression was extremely calm. The celestial Thearcha's heart jolted upon hearing this. He was being intimidated. He was a kindred spirit. Enlin put away his blood-soul cross before releasing Cassidy and Tobias to return to Emperor Yi Deng's side. Enlin, don't think this is over. Tobias's expression darkened. Cassidy placed one hand on her hip and pointed at Enlin with the other. Next time, I'll capture you, torture your consciousness, and suck your blood dry. Enlin pursed his lips. He felt like Cassidy was telling the truth. Let's go. Emperor Yi Deng harumphed coldly before leading the way. Cassidy, Tobias, and Feng Wuyen hurriedly followed along in fear that they would be captured again if they were too slow. These mighty figures of the blood race, who were powerful enough to shake an entire region, ran away with their faces ashen. Emperor Yi Deng came to his senses and recalled that not only had he failed to exact revenge, but he had also lost 20 million spirit stones. He was instantly enraged. He slammed a palm into the ground in rage. Boom! An aura of death surged for over 50 kilometers, and the earth cracked open as countless lives were lost. At the border of the dark marshlands, Enlin looked up at the celestial Dharch with reverence in his eyes. This was the second time. The celestial Dharch had descended like a heavenly god to save him from a dire situation. Countless words converged into one sentence. Thank you, Flex King. Chapter 1104. The celestial Dharch still had a nonchalant smile on his face, but his expression darkened upon hearing Unlin's words. Who are you calling the Flex Monarch? Unlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. He had been too excited just then and had accidentally revealed his true thoughts. He was in deep sh*t now. The celestial Dharch spoke in a meaningful and heartfelt voice. The celestial court represents the dignity of the human race, so we naturally have to put on a brave front in order to avoid being looked down upon. Everything I'm doing is for the sake of the human race, Unlin nodded. I understand. The celestial Dharch was flexing for the sake of the human race. What a lofty and noble ideal. It had risen to a completely different level. Unlin felt like this was something he could learn from. Celestial Dharch, I'm really sorry to have troubled you again, Su Xiaolan said with an apologetic expression. Haha. Unlin is a troublemaker. I'm not used to him not stirring up some trouble. I'm glad you're fine. The celestial Dharch chuckled in response. Unlin was a little embarrassed upon hearing this. The celestial Dharch turned to Unlin and Su Xiaolan with a meaningful gaze. Besides, Emperor Yi Deng is so enraged. You must have killed a lot of blood tribe cultivators for the sake of the human race, right? That's a good thing. Tell me in detail what you've done this time. Hearing this, Unlin gave a brief recount of the events that had transpired. The celestial Thearcha's heart jolted upon hearing this, and he re-evaluated Unlin and Su Xiaolan's combat prowess. They had ventured deep into the enemy's lair, killed several return-to-void stage mighty figures, and slain over 1,000 blood tribe powerful beings. Just this courage alone was worthy of admiration. Thinking back, how long had it been since he had been this hot-blooded? Let's go home, the celestial Dharch said. Unlin and Su Xiaolan were moved once again upon hearing this. It was a very simple sentence, but it struck them with a sense of reliability and safety. Just like that, the two of them returned to Lingken City with the celestial Dharch. At the top of Lingken City, the homeroom teacher, the flying sword god, had originally planned to properly reprimand this willful student after Unlin returned. Then, he saw Unlin and the celestial Dharch flying back, laughing and chatting. Flying sword god. However, he couldn't bring himself to reprimand her. He respectfully stepped forward and bowed to the celestial emperor. The other students were extremely excited. They didn't expect to see the legendary celestial emperor here, and they all went up to pay their respects. At the same time, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. The gap between people was really big. When they were still idling on the city wall, Unlin was already chatting happily with the celestial Dharch. As a matter of fact, the celestial Dharch had personally escorted Unlin and Su Xiaolan back. This was simply off the charts. The celestial Dharch chatted with the teachers and students on the city wall for a while before departing. Not only was he warm and gentle, but he was also ethereal and aloof, giving off the feeling that he was a super powerful being. Unlin committed this information to memory. After that, it was time for idling again. The Blood Tribe army didn't dare to come to Lingkan City, and the soldiers of Lingkan City didn't attack either. Thus, everyone just sat there peacefully. Miao Tian, Luo Ziping, Zhong Yongyan, and the others pestered Unlin, asking him to recount his heroic deeds in the Blood Tribe. Unlin had no choice but to continue flexing and recount his heroic deeds. The incident at the Bone Demon Blood sect soon shook the entire Dark Marshlands and even spread to the entire Tai Chu continent. The death of 4 return-to-void stage mighty figures was considered a major event on the Tai Chu continent. After that, Emperor Yi Deng intentionally spread the name of the main culprit, Unlin, in order to lay the groundwork for him to kill Unlin in the future. Thus, Unlin became famous again. His name once again entered the eyes of all the powers on the Tai Chu continent. In the past 2 years there had been quite a lot of big news regarding Enlin. Even in the boundless Tai Chu continent, where there were countless prodigies, he could be considered as one of the most dazzling stars. He had founded a powerful sect at such a young age, and his combat prowess was unparalleled. He had even mastered the core tribulation transcendence technique. What kind of supremely talented young prodigy could achieve what he had achieved? All of a sudden, the name Enlin not only became the idol of all the young cultivators, but he also became the idol of countless female cultivators. News of what had happened in the dark marshlands had even spread to the distant West Sea. In the depths of the West Sea, within the Sea Heart Palace. Ha 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 ha! As expected of a young hero. Lan Xingyang chortled with glee as he read a piece of news. The super heavenly lightning god really does strike wherever he goes. He's starting to bully the blood tribe now. Lan Xiaoni was a little concerned. Will he attract the attention of the blood tribe Dao integration stage mighty figures? Lan Xingyang looked at his daughter with a smile. Do you still not have confidence in your big boss? Besides, the bomb I gave him hasn't even been used yet. He could sense whether the bomb was used or not. That's true. Big Boss Enlin is the best. Lan Xiaoni's feeble expression was replaced by one of determination. What we have to do now is to unite the forces of the West Sea and become Big Boss Enlin's backup force. Lan Xingyang nodded with elation. Enlin's appearance had made his daughter grow up quite a bit. He sighed with emotion. Working for the heavens. This is a new path, right? Under a vast expanse of darkness, a gargantuan floating continent was slowly drifting through the air. During the day they existed in a dark space, and at night they appeared in the air above the Tai Chu continent, absorbing the power of stars between heaven and earth to cultivate. This was the territory of the Dark Wing tribe, the floating continent. At this moment, all of the Dark Wing tribe cultivators were busy with post-war reconstruction work. The battle between Black Spirit Snake and the Dark Wing Emperor had been earth-shattering, and the entire continent had almost been destroyed by them. As such, the reconstruction work was also quite extensive. What? You want me to pay 10 million spirit stones for a casual job? You've gone too far, Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. The Dark Wing Emperor hung up the voice transmission talisman with rage and fell silent again as he looked down at his imperial castle, which had been sliced in half. It was simply too painful to repair it. Just the imperial castle alone cost 10 million spirit stones. How depressing! They had only fought one battle, and they were already suffering such heavy financial losses? The Dark Wing Emperor sat in his chair with a gloomy expression. At this time, a gentle and beautiful woman with skin as white as the moon and long black hair that fell to her knees walked into the imperial palace with light steps. The Dark Wing Emperor's expression eased slightly upon seeing her, and a smile appeared on his face. Moonlit Night Monarch, why are you back? How are things going with the evil-slaying sword? The Moonlit Night Monarch was his most trusted aide, and she was also the monarch with the highest completion rate. If there was anyone who could make him feel better, it would be this monarch. The Dark Wing Emperor trusted this monarch very much, and he had always had high expectations for her. The Moonlit Night Monarch's expression was cold as she held a stack of newspapers and intelligence reports in her hands. I'm not doing this mission anymore. Dark Wing Emperor, what a heart-piercing moonlit night. Chapter 1105. The Moonlit Night Monarch's words reverberated in the Dark Wing Emperor's ears. The Black Wing Emperor, who had finally managed to hear some good news, nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. You're quitting the mission? What's wrong, Moonlit Night Monarch? The Dark Wing Emperor was perplexed. The Moonlit Night Monarch tossed a pile of information toward the Dark Wing Emperor expressionlessly. I don't want to die. The Dark Wing Emperor. The Emperor carefully read through the information gathered by the Moonlit Night Monarch, and his expression gradually darkened. What a heart-wrenching sight! At the end of the information was the Moonlit Night Monarch's conclusion. Enlin's power level, Return to Void Final Stage. Two mighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage were required to kill Enlil, and one of them had to be cannon fodder. The Dark Wing Emperor stared at the information and analysis before him, but he couldn't find any reason to retort. 4 years. It's only been 4 years. The Dark Wing Emperor's hands trembled as he held the information. I've never been an idiot to send minions to help him level up. I used a Return to Void stage true monarch right from the get-go. But why did I still lose? His heart was so stifled. Why couldn't anything go his way? The moonlit night monarch offered words of consolation. You can't be blamed for this. Enlil is simply too uncanny. His power is growing at an unfathomable rate, not to mention the special power hidden within his body. I really can't complete this mission. I'm willing to accept any punishment. The moonlit night monarch expressed her stance again. She had a carefree personality, but that didn't mean she didn't have a mind of her own. On the contrary, once she made up her mind on something, she wouldn't change her mind easily. The Dark Wing Emperor felt like he was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. He hoped that the moonlit night monarch would be able to kill Enlil and take back the evil-slaying sword. However, a few years later, she gave up on the mission using fear of death as an excuse. And then Enlil became a big boss. What the F***ck, my head hurts. The Dark Wing Emperor felt like not only had he been bullied by Black Spirit Snake, but he had also been bullied by a junior like Enlil. Guards! Summon all the monarchs! The Dark Wing Emperor roared. On the monarch castle, 11 engravings lit up. This meant that the Dark Wing tribe had a total of 11 Return to Void Final Stage monarchs. That's right, there were already 11 true monarchs who had attained the power of the divine Tao. Many powerful true monarchs tore open the dimension and arrived at the Emperor's order. Soon, 11 Return to Void Final Stage powerful beings had gathered in the palace. The Moonlit Night Monarch ranked 3rd or 2nd among all of the monarchs present, and any one of the monarchs present was powerful enough to kill Enlil. The Dark Wing Emperor circulated the information that Yu Yi had gathered among the true monarchs. The true monarchs were confused, but they still looked carefully. The more they looked, the more shocked they became. A handsome man looked as if he had just survived a disaster. The Moonlit Night Monarch has decided to give up on the mission of killing Enlil and retrieving the evil-slaying sword. Which one of you is willing to accept the mission? The Dark Wing Emperor asked. Hearing this, all the monarchs cried out in alarm. The Moonlit Night Monarch, who had never failed a mission before, was actually giving up on it. The handsome man wanted to clap his hands upon seeing this, as if he had found a soulmate. He was the Starry Night Monarch who had accepted the mission and then given up on it. As a result, the Starry Night Monarch was punished to supply energy to the Heart of Darkness for 100 years, but he had no regrets. This time, he had snuck out during the Emperor's summon, only to find that even the Moonlit Night Monarch had given up on the mission. As expected, he wasn't the only one who knew how precious life was. The Dark Wing Emperor's words reverberated throughout the palace, but all of the monarchs hesitated. Emperor, you've seen the Moonlit Night Monarch's analysis. Your mission is basically sending us to our deaths. A hot-tempered monarch chimed in. That's right. Where are we going to find Return to Void Final Stage cannon fodder? Mighty figures of that level are all scheming and scheming. Who would be stupid enough to sacrifice themselves? Another monarch chimed in. Could it be that the Dark Wing Emperor is telling us to team up, with one responsible for killing him and the other responsible for sending ourselves to our deaths? What a vicious boss! Dark Wing Emperor, this mission is a suicidal one. I remember you telling us in the past that our lives are the most important thing in this world. We have always been abiding by this priceless advice. Could it be that you have forgotten about it? A true king lamented in pain. Just like that, the group of true monarchs became excited and started a heated discussion among themselves. All of the discussions pointed toward one central idea, which was that this mission was too dangerous, and they couldn't do it. The Dark Wing Emperor was on the verge of breaking down. Who says we're definitely going to die? Does the Moonlit Night Monarch's analysis have to be correct? Perhaps there are other ways to achieve this goal? Can't you all use your brains? Use their brains? Another round of heated discussion ensued. All of the monarchs agreed that the Moonlit Night Monarch's analysis was very reasonable. Dark Wing Emperor. Right at this moment, the Moonlit Night Monarch raised her head and bowed slightly. Moonlit Night has a suggestion. The Dark Wing Emperor's expression eased. Please speak. The mysterious power within Enlin's body will only be triggered when he's on the brink of death. As long as we don't endanger his life, there shouldn't be any life-threatening danger. The Moonlit Night Monarch's voice was as refreshing as a clear spring. The Dark Wing Emperor's expression shifted. Moonlit Night Monarch, what do you mean? Only take the sword, not kill, the Moonlit Night Monarch replied. This. The Dark Wing Emperor's eyes lit up before his brows furrowed. Are we not going to avenge the Dark Night Monarch? The Moonlit Night Monarch replied in a calm voice. That depends on whether avenging the Dark Night Monarch or the evil-slaying sword is more important. If we only take the sword, then I'm willing to accept another mission. A conflicted expression appeared on the Dark Wing Emperor's face before he heaved a forlorn sigh. So be it. We only take the sword, not kill. The rewards for the mission remain the same, so I'll leave this mission to Moonlit Night Monarch. I hope you won't disappoint me. All of the monarchs' hearts jolted upon hearing this, and they couldn't help but look at the Moonlit Night Monarch with envy. If they only took the sword and didn't kill, then the difficulty of this mission would plummet. One had to realize that they would receive a divine fruit and Tao inheritance light upon completing this mission. This was a huge boon. Some of the more impatient monarchs even wanted to yell, "Give up on that mission and let me do it. Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty." The Moonlit Night extended an indifferent salute to express her gratitude. She stepped forward and disappeared into the darkness of the night. The Dark Wing Emperor glowered at the other 10 monarchs. Meeting adjourned. Chapter 1106. Ling Ken City. Enlin was lying on the city wall, basking in the moonlight. Su Xiaolan sat beside Enlin with her eyes tightly shut as she silently refined the holy flames within her body. "Xiaolan, do you think I'll conquer the entire Dark Marshlands one day?" Enlin suddenly asked. Su Xiaolan opened her eyes upon hearing Enlin's words. Her eyes reflected the starry sky, and it was as if a vermilion bird were soaring into the sky to soar through the myriad of worlds. I think you can, and it won't be too late," Su Xiaolan replied with conviction. She had never doubted Enlin's abilities. However, she was still afraid that someone important to her would be in danger during this process. "Have you really decided to do this?" Su Xiaolan asked. Enlin heaved a faint sigh. "I've already issued the mission. There's no turning back now." That's right, they were preparing to make a big move. Within the demonic slaughter space, Enlin had already extracted 1,000 milliliters of holy blood and handed it to Cassidy and Tobias for them to develop. Never underestimate 1,000 milliliters of holy blood. That was the most alluring thing to the Blood Tribe. They would first target the people close to them, then the Blood Tribe mighty figures who weren't too vicious, and then they would gradually expand their influence. After a year, all of the Blood Tribe cultivators who had been influenced by the holy blood would gather together and undergo the servant ceremony of Enlin. If things went smoothly, perhaps half of the Dark Marshlands would fall under Enlin's control. "Sigh, I actually just want to be an ordinary cultivator. Why is it that the more I go down this path, the more I'm straying from it? I'm starting to regret creating that holy blood cult." Enlin wore a disconsolate expression. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. "If you think about it this way, wouldn't it be safer to develop the holy blood cult for the sake of the human race and turn our enemies into our servants?" Enlin's expression changed upon hearing this, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "Impressive, Xiaolan, you've also learned to apply what you've learned." "What do you mean?" Su Xiaolan asked blankly. For the sake of the human race's prosperity. Enlin gestured with his hands. This was the lofty idea of the celestial ruler. Enlin just remembered it, but he didn't expect Su Xiaolan to see through it. Su Xiaolan. What was the point of unifying the dark marshlands? Enlin had been confused before, but now that he thought about it, wasn't it to make the human race safer and the continent more harmonious? With his lofty ideals as his guide, he was immediately filled with motivation. Enlin looked up at the stars. Perhaps my happiest days were when I sold a steamer of buns for 1,000 spirit stones. But for the sake of the human race, I will carry this heavy burden forward and fight endlessly. Su Xiaolan silently slapped her forehead. There were too many things to complain about, and she didn't want to say anything. By the way, Xiaolan, can I learn more about our parents now? Enlin asked with a buoyant smile. A blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. How can you try to get close to them like that? They're my parents. You've pissed off more than a few Dao integration stage super mighty figures anyway. But you have to promise me that you'll listen to me and don't do anything rash. Enlin immediately made a promise. Su Xiaolan waved the crimson bracelet on her wrist with a smile. This is a relic of my mother, the vermilion bird bracelet. You haven't forgotten about it, have you? Enlin nodded. Of course I have. Back at the Vermilion Bird sect, after Su Xiaolan had obtained the Vermilion Bird bracelet, she had told him that it was something that had belonged to her mother. At that time, Enlin had been keeping an eye out for her, and he was planning to go and help her with some matters when he could take care of himself. My mother's name is Zhu Yishuang, and she's the younger sister of the current sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect, Zhu Shuza. Back when Sidu Feng was still the sect leader, both of them were strong contenders for the position of sect leader. Su Xiaolan began to recount her story. Enlin cooperatively brought out some high-quality, immortal wine from his storage ring, and the two of them chatted as they drank. My mother and my uncle's aptitude was about the same, and they both progressed to the return to void stage at almost the same time. After that, they were invited by the celestial court to enter the ancient Tai Chu realm. In the void star section of the ancient Tai Chu realm, my mother and my father met for the first time. That must have been an unforgettable encounter, Enlin chimed in after taking a sip of wine. Su Xiaolan nodded. That's right, it was quite an unforgettable encounter. The two of them fought over a pile of realm essence crystals, and my mother almost killed my father. PFFF. Enlin spat out a mouthful of wine. Aren't the unforgettable stories we understand a little different from each other? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but smile upon seeing Enlin's dumbstruck expression. She placed her slender hands behind her back and looked up at the night sky with a reminiscent look in her eyes as she continued to speak. After that, my mother stole the realm essence crystals. Out of kindness, she didn't kill my father and left just like that. After about a dozen or so days, my mother accidentally fell into a perilous realm and was unable to escape. It was my father who sacrificed an extremely precious mystic treasure to save her. Perhaps it was at that time that my father and mother finally met and became friends. Enlin sighed with emotion. No discord, no concord. A good marriage always starts with the kindness of one party. He turned to look at Su Xiaolan as he spoke. He didn't know anything when he first entered the university, but wasn't it Su Xiaolan who took him step by step on the path of cultivation? Their marriage had begun from Su Xiaolan's expression of goodwill. Su Xiaolan blushed slightly as she sensed Enlin's scorching gaze. After that, my father and my mother searched for opportunities in the ancient Tai Chu realm together. They helped and supported each other in times of danger, and they gradually developed feelings for each other. Even after they left the ancient Tai Chu realm, their relationship continued to grow. Thus, as time passed, their relationship grew stronger and stronger, and they became more and more important in each other's hearts. One day, my grandfather, Ao Meng, discovered the relationship between my father and my mother. My grandfather vehemently opposed this marriage, and he even threatened to sever their ties. Unlin couldn't help but grumble, "Tsk. What a melodramatic plot. Our mom is extremely talented, and she could even become the future sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect. Where did her parents find the courage to oppose her?" Su Xiaolan explained, "Because my father is a member of the dragon tribe. Relationships between humans and dragons have always been forbidden. Not only is it extremely difficult for them to have children, but the children will also die due to the conflict between the two bloodlines. Also, there's Big Sister Shanine. She forced a phoenix and a true dragon to fail the Dao integration stage, which dealt a heavy blow to the dragon tribe. My father is also a mighty figure who has a chance of progressing to the Dao integration stage, and Grandpa Ao Meng was very adamant in his opposition to this marriage." Unlin heaved a forlorn sigh. How did they overcome this obstacle? Su Xiaolan smiled. "After that, my mother fought her way into the dragon court of the Eastern Seas and beat all of the dragon tribe cultivators into submission before forcibly taking my father away." Unlin's mouth gaped open in astonishment. "Is she that bad *SS? What a peerlessly domineering move. I can almost see a peerlessly beautiful woman looking down upon all the dragons in the world." He felt like the two of them had gotten the wrong script. Wait, Unlin suddenly realized something, and he drew a sharp intake of breath. "Grandpa Ao Meng, the dragon court of the Eastern Seas?" He turned with difficulty to look at Su Xiaolan. "You mean the dragon king of the Eastern Seas, Ao Meng? Who else could it be?" Su Xiaolan blinked. "Unlin, I almost killed your grandpa." He suddenly sighed with emotion. Su Xiaolan. Chapter 1107. Are you talking about the battle at the Flying Ball Tribe mine? Su Xiaolan was speechless. Unlin nodded with lingering fear in his heart. "That's right. I was so angry at the time that I really wanted to kill Ao Meng. Thinking about it now, I'm still a little scared. He had almost killed Su Xiaolan's grandfather. Wasn't that the equivalent of almost killing his own father-in-law? At the time, he was beating him up as if he were his own son. Speaking of which, Su Xiaolan possessed both a true dragon and a phoenix bloodline right from the get-go. He should have thought of this a long time ago, but it was just that he couldn't see the bigger picture." Su Xiaolan immediately offered words of consolation upon seeing Unlin's expression. "You don't have to blame yourself. Ever since my father was taken away by my mother, he severed all ties with Ao Meng and left the Dragon Court. Hence, even I no longer have any ties with the Dragon Court. The Dragon Court won't acknowledge me, and I don't want to acknowledge the Dragon Court." Unlin nodded upon hearing this. Speaking of which, Ao Meng's attitude toward his own children is really weird. It's really hard to imagine that your father was forced to leave just like that. Su Xiaolan took a sip of wine and shook her head. Wasn't the 4-9 immortal sex little dragon princess, Balian, also forced to leave? My grandfather Ao Meng has a knack for forcing his own children away. The two of them looked at each other and burst into laughter as they spoke. Su Xiaolan had never met Ao Meng, so she naturally didn't have any feelings for him. As for the Dragon King of the East Sea, Ao Meng's weird way of thinking was really quite hilarious. Perhaps this is the downside of having too many children. They clearly don't have time to pay attention to their children's thoughts, but they still act like they're doing everything for their children's sake and dictate their lives, Unlin concluded. Su Xiaolan heaved a forlorn sigh. After my father severed all ties with the Dragon Court, he changed his name from Ao Guanyu to Su Guanyun. Unlin laughed. No wonder your surname isn't Ao. Su Xiaolan sounds better. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips into a smile. After that, my father and mother got married, and they lived happily ever after in the Vermilion Bird sect. According to some of the stories, this should be the grand finale, the end of the book. However, Unlin knew that this was only the beginning of the story. The real story began. Su Xiaolan stretched out her fair and delicate hand and said in a charming voice, I'm thirsty, bring me some precious fruits. Unlin immediately took out a first-grade spirit fruit and obediently handed it over. Please enjoy, Your Highness. Be a good boy, little Nz. Su Xiaolan accepted the spirit fruit with a dainty smile before taking a few bites. We lived a happy life for a long time. The legend is true. My parents lived together for so long, but they couldn't give birth to me. Unlin instantly became nervous upon hearing this, but he didn't know what he was nervous about. To put it in a more scientific way, it's because of reproductive isolation between different species. The sperm and the egg don't belong to the same species, so how are they supposed to fuse? Su Xiaolan explained with a serious expression. A rare shy expression appeared on Unlin's face. Then what should we do? He finally understood what he was nervous about. This was a problem that he and Xiaolan had to face as well. To put it more accurately, Xiaolan was also half a dragon tribe member. If Enlin and Su Xiaolan were to be together, wouldn't they also have to face this problem when giving birth in the future? Hence, this was an extremely important problem. What should we do? A light blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. My parents went to the Purple Star Infertility Department for treatment, and they finally solved this problem. Unlin, everyone suddenly fell silent. Why did it feel like there was a peculiar change in the atmosphere? Unlin, I'll go ask Bai Ling some other day. Don't worry. I still have the pill recipe, but the ingredients are very difficult to find. Su Xiaolan blushed as she said, Take the pill and improve your constitution, and you'll be fine. Unlin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. No problem. No matter what ingredients you need, I, Unlin, will be able to obtain them. After that, my parents expended a lot of time and effort in order to nurture my overly powerful Khanate true dragon and phoenix bloodlines. Only then did they find the correct method to prevent my bloodline from self-destructing, thereby saving my life. Su Xiaolan sighed with emotion. She was clearly also feeling a little melancholic about the trials and tribulations of this world. Unlin obediently shifted his body to allow Su Xiaolan to lean on his shoulder. He couldn't help but become nervous. Then the nurturing you mentioned, Su Xiaolan. I have the pill recipe. Unlin heaved a sigh of relief. A smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. In any case, I grew up healthily. My father taught me dragon tribe spell techniques, and my mother taught me fire-type spell technique. My aptitude was good to begin with, and I also had dual bloodlines, so I naturally progressed rapidly in my cultivation. She was actually the stereotype of a prodigy. She had a good background, a good sect, good parents, good aptitude, and lived like a princess. My mother was very fierce. She would beat me whenever I slacked off, and I cried at least a dozen times. In order to train my courage, she would even release some very scary mutant beasts to scare me. On the contrary, my father was the most gentle person. He was also very good at coaxing me, and he looked very good when he smiled. Unlin nodded. That's a pretty good guess. Zhu Yishuang was someone who would overturn the dragon court and forcibly take Su Guanyin away. It wasn't difficult to guess the personalities of her parents. Su Xiaolan slowly recounted her past. Unlin listened with an earnest expression, trying to understand her past. Su Xiaolan spoke with an extremely earnest expression, as if she was going to tell the man beside her about all of the ups and downs she had experienced over the past few years. When I was 12 years old, my parents and second uncle traveled to the void spirit realm in search of an energy crystal that could repress the violent power of the holy vermilion flame. However, they were targeted by 2 Dao integration stage void spirit tribe mighty figures who wanted to devour their consciousness. Su Xiaolan clenched her fists, and her body trembled uncontrollably as she thought back to this past event. Unlin drew Su Xiaolan into his arms and consoled her in a gentle voice. He could already guess the outcome at this point. One of the vermilion bird origin treasures is known as the vermilion bird wings. It's a one-time life-saving treasure that can unleash a vermilion bird spatial movement technique for a short period of time. Even Tao integration stage mighty figures won't be able to stop it. It's a pity that this spatial movement technique can only teleport one person. It was the second vermilion bird origin treasure that my mother obtained. My mother didn't use it for herself, nor did she give it to my father. Instead, she gave the vermilion bird wings to my second uncle and asked him to take good care of me. Su Xiaolan had already begun to sob as she spoke. They left me forever just like that. It was so sudden. They didn't even say goodbye. They disappeared from my life just like that. No one taught me true dragon spell techniques anymore. My uncle and second uncle taught me fire-type spell techniques, but they wouldn't beat me, curse at me, or use monsters to scare me. I was very obedient and tried my best to live my life. I tried my best to smile so that my family wouldn't worry about me, and I tried my best to be a sensible and outstanding woman. Other people would praise me, but the person I wanted to hear praise the most would never appear. Su Xiaolan wept as she spoke, releasing all of the emotions that had been pent up in her heart for many years. Her uncle and second uncle were very concerned about her, and they loved her very much. But how could this kind of care replace the position of her parent? Anlin silently wiped away Su Xiaolan's tears. Su Xiaolan wept for a while before carefully pulling out a photographic crystal and injecting vital energy into it. An image began to appear before her eyes. This was a group photo of a family of 3 wearing intricate red vermilion bird robes. A beautiful woman was smiling with one hand resting on the man's shoulder and the other holding onto the little one's hand. The man with dragon horns had a shy and gentle smile on his face, and he was also holding onto the little one's hand. Little Su Xiaolan stood in the center with her hair tied up in a bun. She was holding onto the little one's hand, and there was an extremely warm and joyful smile on her face. Chapter 1108. I feel like a salted fish. I didn't do anything except stand on the city wall for a dozen or so days. There were still 2 days until the clown's wedding, and many guests had already arrived. On the blessed land with blue skies and green grass, strange beasts and mounts could be seen frequently, and immortals could be seen riding on clouds and riding on the mist. It was a lively and bustling scene. Miao Tian. This was the last day of the end-of-term examinations. That's right, the renowned 4-9 immortal sect of the Kingdom of the 9 States was about to hold their wedding. She turned her head and glared at the people in the distance. Anlin's heart was stirred, and he was a little entranced by this scene. Students, make sure to rest well. After that, the two of them chatted about the past as they passed through the night. She smiled. Of course. Our entire family is top-notch in terms of looks. There was a road paved with roses, which was particularly eye-catching on the lush green landscape. It was like a path of happiness that led all the way to the legendary immortal sect. This grudge, he silently took out a small notebook and noted it down. Flying Sword God's chest constricted at the sight of Anlin. Su Xiaolan recounted the past to Anlin, and her emotions were finally released. Perhaps she was also a little exhausted, and she unknowingly fell asleep in Anlin's arms. On a vast grassland, there were 2 Tao integration stage void spirit tribe mighty figures. This was the second grand ceremony held by the 4-9 immortal sect after the grand opening ceremony. Perhaps it was because it was more famous now, but the scale of this grand ceremony was even larger than the grand opening ceremony. Many of the students still had 0 accolades on their heads. They were simply too powerful. What a warm and beautiful family. This was also why Zhu Shuzo was unable to exact revenge even after becoming the sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect. This was also why Su Xiaolan had repeatedly told Anlin not to act rashly and to listen to her. Wah! Teacher, 0 is so ugly, can you let me pass? I'm not asking for much, just give me 60 points. Any less and any more wasted. Miao Tian pouted and tugged on Flying Sword God's sleeve like a spoiled child. She told Enlin that the two void spirit-tried mighty figures were called the God-engulfing skeleton and Ember. Enlin rode on Dabai and greeted his classmates warmly. The homeroom teacher thought to himself as he nibbled on the steamed buns that Enlin gave him that Dabai ignored. "Do you think you're a leader here for an inspection?" At this time, Enlin and the others were on their way. "Good morning." Enlin smiled. "No, I woke up a little earlier than you." Enlin chuckled. The next day, the sun rose. "By the way, do you think I look more like my father or my mother?" Su Xiaolan turned to look at Enlin with her bright eyes. Su Xiaolan smiled shyly and blissfully. "Good morning, you didn't sleep last night?" All of the students were on the verge of tears upon hearing Enlin's words. Class President Xianyuan Cheng had accidentally annihilated the entire Blood Tribe army, and they didn't even get to touch the Blood Tribe soldiers. Zhu Shuzi didn't reveal their identities in order to prevent Su Xiaolan from coming into contact with them too early. Su Xiaolan nodded upon hearing this and began to meditate. He was actually lying. It was a rare opportunity to hug Xiaolan, so he wasn't going to waste it on sleeping. "Thank you for your hard work, students." Awards were given out every year, but weddings only happened once in a lifetime. This scene was really heartwarming. Enlin thought to himself for a moment before replying, "You look like your father when you're living, but you look like your mother when you're fighting." Enlin and Su Xiaolan began to ponder about whether to go to the 4-9 Immortal sect. Wah! Big Brother and said he was going to flex with us and fly with us. Why is he flexing by himself? Enlin looked up at the vast starry sky, and a determined expression appeared on his face as he took a deep breath. Enlin sighed with emotion. "Xiaolan, you were so adorable when you were little. You had such a beautiful smile. Our parents also had beautiful smiles." Emperor Yideng had already spread the news of what Enlin and Su Xiaolan had done in the Dark Marshlands, so everyone knew about it. 4 returned to Void stage mighty figures, and over 1,000 Blood Tribe powerful beings had been annihilated. Xiao Chao's wedding was taking place the day after tomorrow, and this was an extremely important event that they couldn't afford to delay. Enlin conversed with all of the students in a friendly manner. Enlin wasn't going to do anything rash. He had to break through to the Return to Void stage first. Purple Star State. The students of the first class had created a legend of 0 casualties. This mighty figure's accolades were probably going to defy the heavens. As a powerful being on the Immortal Rankings board, Miao Tian felt extremely aggrieved to have received a 0. However, when she thought about how even a prodigy like Su Qianyun had received a 0, she felt a little better in the end. They decided to have their homeroom teacher collect the individual awards from the school. In reality, Filthy Rich and didn't really care about the awards. After being praised, Su Xiaolan's grief faded. Miao Tian was speechless. The atmosphere was extremely harmonious. The Flying Sword God naturally knew how to handle matters like this, so he was extremely accommodating. "I did get tanned, but it wasn't hard at all." They discussed for a while. He was a renowned monarch who ruled over an entire realm. Even among Dao integration stage super mighty figures, he was one of the most powerful beings in the world. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, Miao Tian, and the others applied for leave before heading to the 4-9 Immortal sect to prepare for the wedding. Not only were there human sect representatives participating, but there were also many powerful beings from other powers on the continent participating as well. It was like a world-class wedding. Thus, Xianyuan Qing, Enlin, and Su Xiaolan received full marks, while everyone else received 0 marks. Everyone began their journey back. Enlin didn't need to cultivate, so he rode Dabai around the city wall and began a new patrol. They all greeted Enlin with admiration and envy upon seeing him. At the same time, he had also created a record of over 90% of the students receiving 0 marks. A wry smile appeared on the Flying Sword God's face. "Don't worry, this end-of-semester examination is a special occasion, so you'll all graduate. However, I have to be realistic about the marks. Besides, everyone receives 0 marks, so it's quite harmonious. What's so bad about it? All of you are tanned. However, after Su Xiaolan came of age, she used some methods to find out about this. Even though he was handing out an immortal pill, he still smiled to show his respect. Thus, the end-of-semester examination drew to a close in such a friendly and harmonious atmosphere. This is the first time I've shown this photographic crystal to anyone. Now, I can only rely on this picture to recall what my parents looked like, Su Xiaolan said in a soft voice. Enlin and Su Xiaolan were even more outrageous. The Bone Demon Blood Sect incident had shaken the southwestern region of the Dark Marshlands, and all Blood Tribe cultivators were in danger. Now, even the students couldn't find a single trace of the Blood Tribe cultivators. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly upon hearing this before bursting into laughter. Faint dimples appeared on her cheeks, and she was clearly amused by Enlin's words. Su Xiaolan woke up from Enlin's embrace, and a faint blush appeared on her face. She silently left Enlin's embrace and leaned against the city wall. This was actually quite easy to investigate. Chapter 1109. Enlin sat on Dabai's back and flew toward the teleportation spell formation in the gem state. Behind him were his fellow students who were going to the 4-9 Immortal sect with him to attend Xiao Chao's wedding. Most of them were prodigies who had been poached by Enlin to the 4-9 Immortal sect, and the Celestial Larch was quite concerned about this. However, the Heavenly Court did not forcibly restrict the departure of these talents. Thus, they could only silently complain and feel stifled. They could not really do anything to them. Enlin, have you asked Xiao Chou what he's missing? I don't even know what to give him this time, Su Xiaolan asked in a quiet voice. Enlin smiled. Didn't you already give him a present at Qing Hu City's wedding? That's different. This is his second wedding, so I have to give him a present. Su Xiaolan replied with a matter-of-fact expression. Just give him something random. We're family, so there's no need to be so formal. Enlin waved a hand. We're family, so how can we be so casual? It's exactly because we're family that we have to take this seriously. Su Xiaolan expressed her opinion. The two of them had differing opinions. In the end, Enlin was convinced. Enlin, what are you planning to give him? Su Xiaolan asked. Enlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan stared at Enlin. Have you never thought about this? Haha. Of course not. Enlin interjected with a smile. I've already prepared a very good present. He would never admit that he had been too preoccupied with thinking about what gifts the sect would receive during the wedding that he had forgotten to send a congratulatory gift to the clown. Su Xiaolan extended a hand. What are you planning to give him? Let me have a look. Enlin paused momentarily, and was just about to bring out something good when the evil-slaying sword in his storage ring suddenly began to tremor and surge with battle intent. An urgent voice sounded in his mind. Be careful. A dark wing powerhouse is approaching. Enlin's expression shifted. A being that could make the evil-slaying sword a powerful being had to be terrifyingly powerful. What? The evil-slaying sword appeared in his hand. Su Xiaolan was perplexed upon seeing this. You want to give me the evil-slaying sword? Everyone be careful. A strong enemy is approaching, protect yourselves. Enlin suddenly shouted, his expression as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Su Qianyun, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others reacted extremely quickly upon hearing this, and they instantly drew their weapons. Enlin leaped down from Dabai's body and released Gundam 3 and Yao Ji. Protect them. This was the first time everyone had seen Enlin reveal such an expression as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and they couldn't help but become even more nervous. The evil-slaying sword became even more excited. Don't let me out, let me go back. Enlin faltered momentarily before becoming enraged. I am the sword of the mighty sword Immortal Enlin. How can you say something so cowardly? You're such a disappointment. He didn't understand why the evil-slaying sword, which had accompanied him through countless battles, would say something so heartfelt. However, he knew that he couldn't afford to lose his composure in the face of such a formidable enemy. He hadn't even cowered yet, so why was his weapon cowering first? The evil-slaying sword spoke in a panicked voice. "This isn't a question of whether I'm afraid or not, there's no time to explain. Just listen to me, hurry up." "I won't listen, I won't listen." Unlin shook his head with determination. Evil-slaying sword, crack. A crisp crack sounded. A pitch-black crack appeared in front of them and then spread out. A pair of slender, white feet stepped through the spatial rift, following which a lithe and graceful woman in a black dress emerged from the spatial rift. She had a breathtaking beauty with a pair of clear and tranquil eyes. Her skin was as radiant as the crescent moon, and her knee-length dress revealed her flawless calves. The woman's appearance stunned many people. Not only were Dabai and Enlin momentarily dazed, but even the top-tier beauties Su Qianyun and Su Xiaolan were also momentarily dazed. It was clearly daytime, but they felt as if they had seen the most beautiful moon. "The moon is so beautiful, woof!" Dabai couldn't help but praise with his eyes wide open. Of course, the woman's appearance didn't make them lower their guard. The pair of black wings on her back was too conspicuous. Almost in an instant, everyone was able to determine the identity of this woman who had suddenly appeared. She was a dark-winged tribe mighty figure. The woman's expression was as cold as the moon, and her eyes suddenly locked onto Enlin. A rare seductive smile appeared on her face. "Evil-slaying sword. Enlin, I've finally found you." Enlin's heart sank. This dark-winged tribe powerful being was indeed targeting him. A concerned expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. She had previously crushed an emergency summon talisman from the Celestial Court. That was the summon talisman from the Celestial Court that she had requested from the Dark Marshlands Execution Department. Now that the talisman was gone, how was she going to summon her daddy? Xianyuan Cheng was just about to pull out his voice transmission talisman to call for help when the woman in the black dress gripped the air. Boom! Heaven and earth instantly tremored as the space within a radius of 50 kilometers was sealed. This time, not only had his escape route been cut off, but even the connection between his voice transmission talisman and the outside world had been completely severed. "Who are you?" Enlin asked with a grave expression. A friendly smile appeared on the woman's intricate features. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Moonlit Night, and I don't have any other intentions. I just want to take back the evil-slaying sword that belongs to the Dark Wing tribe. As long as you hand over the sword, I promise I won't harm any of you." Everyone faltered upon hearing this. They had thought that this Dark Wing tribe powerful being was here to exact revenge on Enlin, but they didn't think that she would actually be plotting against Enlin's sword. The Moonlit Night Monarch was vastly renowned across the entire Tai Chu continent. She was an extremely powerful mighty figure at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage, and she was on the same level as Layden of the Blood Tribe and War God Erlang of the Celestial Court. However, at this moment, the way she phrased it was a little strange. Generally speaking, shouldn't killing and robbing be the correct course of action for powerful beings of this caliber? Why was she using a friendly tone to negotiate with Enlin? All they wanted was the sword, and they would leave without harming a single hair on Enlin's body. Inexplicably, a thought uncontrollably emerged in everyone's mind. The Moonlit Night Monarch of the Dark Wing tribe seemed to be a little cowardly. Enlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Was she really going to be so easy to negotiate with? The Moonlit Night Monarch had done a thorough investigation, so she was naturally going to back down. She had a bottom line in her heart, and that was to not force Enlin into a corner. The Moonlit Night Monarch had already suffered from being overly cautious in her actions, and that was to raise a boss in the form of Enlin. Right now, she was planning to complete this mission as quickly as possible. This was actually the safest way to proceed. "You stole the evil-slaying sword, so it should belong to the Darkwing tribe." The moonlit night monarch stepped forward, and her intricate foot stomped into the air. Rumble, a suffocating aura erupted forth. The power of the divine Tao instantly proliferated forth, and day turned into night within a radius of over 50 kilometers. Only a pristine white moon hung high in the sky, casting a ray of moonlight upon the moonlit night monarch, making her appear as if she were a noble and holy goddess of the moon. The moonlit night monarch had already given Enlin a reason to hand over the evil-slaying sword. At the same time, she unleashed a terrifying aura in an attempt to force him to submit. I stole the sword with my own abilities, so how can you say that it belongs to you? Enlin could sense the evil-slaying sword trembling uneasily, and his aura soared as he faced the moonlit night monarch with no fear on his face. Little Xie belongs to me, no one can take her away from me. Chapter 11:10. Enlin sighed internally before turning to look at the woman in the fluttering black dress in the distance, and he felt a headache coming on as he didn't know how to get out of this predicament. Boom! The rich green light instantly materialized into a suit of armor that enveloped Enlin's entire body, leaving only his head and limbs exposed. Immediately afterward, something even more astonishing happened. This was because 4 moonlit night monarchs with identical auras had suddenly appeared in the air. Enlin's hand trembled, and a gash had been sliced open on his left arm, from which blood was gushing out incessantly. The terrifying power of the moon erupted forth, surging through the entire night sky. The power from the fist surged through the air for close to 10 kilometers, causing the earth to crack open and trees to uproot before being torn to shreds by violent gale-force winds. At the same time, Enlin's other fist had already fallen. They were all wielding extremely sharp moonlight scythes, which they aimed at different parts of Enlin's body, sealing off all of Enlin's paths of retreat. Boom! Yao Ji was a puppet that had mastered spatial skipping, and Tina was extremely proficient in the Tao of space. If they combined their powers, there was definitely a chance that they would be able to break through the moonlit night monarch's spatial seal. Enlin activated his divine inspection technique and was able to just barely capture the trajectory of the moonlit night monarch's attack. He positioned one hand in front of the scythe and clenched his other hand into a fist before launching it toward the woman in front of him. When the students heard this, they were very tactful and quickly retreated. Her words reverberated through the air. Enlin activated his divine sense to its fullest extent while maintaining his divine inspection technique so that he could react to his enemy's attack as quickly as possible. The moonlit night monarch's black hair danced in the wind, and her slender body was knocked flying for over a kilometer by the terrifying power imbued within Enlin's fist. "Go, classmate Enlin!" Su Qianyan cheered in her mellow voice. "Enlin, you have to be careful. Your life is the most important thing," Su Xiaolan cautioned. His skin began to turn crimson gold, and his aura climbed steadily. Yu Ye's expression changed slightly, and a crescent moon flashed in her black and white eyes. At the critical moment, her head tilted to the side, dodging the most terrifying part of the fist energy. "Big Brotherin will be waiting for your safe return." Miao Tian was already trembling in fear, but she still mustered up her courage and yelled. An earth-shattering sound exploded. It was obvious that Enlin was at a disadvantage in this battle. But in the next instant, he was stunned again. This was the most troublesome aspect of spatial jumping. Without extremely high attainments in the art of space, one wouldn't even know where the other party would appear and attack from. If she wanted to snatch away Enlin's evil-slaying sword, it would depend on whether she had the ability or not. Suddenly, an extremely dazzling light illuminated the entire world. Enlin hid in the turtle shell and was completely unharmed. Su Xiaolan murmured, "Enlin is so green." The moonlit night monarch's expression shifted. The moonlit night monarch had been blasted flying for a very long time, and her aura was a little disordered, but she didn't sustain any injuries. Enlin didn't turn around and merely gave her a thumbs up. For extremely sharp moonlight slashes landed on the lush green turtle shell from different directions, and an extremely sharp screeching sound rang out. And Lin finally came to his senses and immediately stowed the evil-slaying sword away into his storage ring. Rather than worrying like this, he might as well put it back into his storage ring. It was like the most powerful spear piercing toward the most powerful shield with no regard for its own safety. The moonlit night monarch's attack also fell at this moment, and Lin's body was enveloped by an extremely scorching ball of flames, and he transformed into a flaming war god. He was like a blazing sun piercing through the darkness of the divine Tao unleashed by the moonlit night monarch. Crack, you're very powerful, but you're still too weak for me. The moonlit night monarch raised her proud head and stepped into the air, upon which her body instantly disappeared on the spot. Debai's brows perked up. He felt like this was a very interesting development. Sigh, and Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. Everyone, and Lin still couldn't dodge this attack. Spatial skipping. The evil-slaying sword was very touched, and it let loose a torrent of abuse. Are you an idiot? You know she's going to take me from me. Hurry up and put me away. The crimson golden fist was imbued with explosive power, and the space in its wake twisted and warped as a powerful sense of pressure radiated from its fist, causing the air within a radius of several kilometers to liquefy. This evading turtle technique was the core spell technique that Enlin had received from Tianqinji in the Fallen God Tomb. This was the spell technique that a Tao integration stage mighty figure of the Heavenly Turtle tribe was most proud of. In the next instant, the moonlit night monarch had already appeared before Enlin, and her moonlight scythe slashed toward Enlin's waist at an extremely terrifying speed. That's right, that was a turtle shell. If possible, he really didn't want to use this technique again. However, he really couldn't think of any other way to block the moonlit night monarch's attack. The moonlit night monarch's brows furrowed as she felt like things were getting a little troublesome. His head and limbs instantly retracted into the turtle shell. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed as she felt like things were not as simple as they seemed. Her brows furrowed as she felt like something was amiss. An unprecedented sense of peril engulfed Enlin's entire body, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Even the students who had fled into the distance were dumbstruck. The evil-slaying sword had once belonged to the Dark Wing tribe, so who knew what would happen if it was left outside? For example, the moonlit night monarch might summon it back using some kind of mystic technique. The turtle shell was finally showing signs of cracking. Seeing as that's the case, I'll cripple you first. The moonlit night monarch's brows furrowed slightly as she gripped the air in front of her. Moonlight radiated from the night sky, and a long, pristine white scythe materialized in her hand. That's right, an extremely dazzling and rich green light burst forth from Enlin's body. He possessed 6 divine flames and 1 holy flame, so he was extremely compatible with his fire god mode, thereby creating a 1+1 effect that was greater than 2. This had already become his most powerful self-detonation technique. Flames erupted forth. That was not the case. However, the power behind the moonlit night monarch's attack had also completely disappeared. Little Xie is one of my people. Enlin had tried this spell technique once before, and he was completely dumbstruck after witnessing its effect. He almost cursed at Tianqinji from afar. The scythe sliced into Enlin's arm, and blood splattered through the air. At first glance, it looked as if the two of them were evenly matched. This was the fearsomeness of a mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage who had attained the power of the divine Tao. Spell techniques were ever-changing, and they were impossible to defend against. Furthermore, each and every one of them possessed the power to severely wound or even kill him. Find a chance to escape, I'll hold her off. Enlin roared to everyone behind him. Enlin let loose an enraged roar. Evil-slaying turtle. The moonlit night monarch ignored the fleeing students. Her target had always been the evil-slaying sword in Enlin's storage ring, and this plan had not changed in the slightest. All of the students fell silent in that instant. They couldn't even complain. The turtle shell had blocked the moonlit night monarch's attack. F***ck. His entire arm had almost been sliced off by the scythe. The moonlit night monarch didn't pause in the slightest as she disappeared on the spot again. Chapter 11:11. The moonlit night monarch, who had been split into four, looked at Lin's turtle shell with furrowed brows. Her body became insubstantial, and her true body wielding the moonlight side reappeared. He, the mighty sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect, the renowned Lord of Transcendence, is acting like a coward here? Moonlit Night Monarch mocked mercilessly. Lin's hands, feet, and head had all retracted into his turtle shell, so he was naturally not going to be goaded into action. He charged toward the Moonlit Night Monarch atop his turtle shell. That's right, the turtle shell that was glowing with a dazzling green light was spinning rapidly toward the woman in the black dress with an extremely powerful force. Moonlit Night Monarch. The woman extended a slender hand and pressed it down viciously onto the turtle shell. Mystic Moon Divine Palm. The full moon in the night sky cast down moonlight imbued with the power of true Een, which instantly materialized into a divine palm that fell from the sky before striking the rotating turtle shell. Boom! An earth-shattering force crashed the turtle shell into the ground, raising all of the mountains and forests within a radius of close to 10 kilometers to the ground. So hard! Moonlit Night pursed her lips with rage as she looked down at the green turtle shell that had yet to be broken through. She was just about to unleash a more powerful spell technique to break through the annoying turtle shell when the spatial seal at the very edge of the turtle shell was shattered by two extremely powerful bursts of spatial power. The Moonlit Night Monarch's expression shifted. Even though the spatial seal was only a barrier that she had set up casually, it was almost impossible for a return-to-void stage mighty figure to break through it without unleashing the power of the divine Tao. Lin's team had such a powerful being hidden in their ranks? In the end, the Moonlit Night Monarch had underestimated the power of the divine techniques that Tina had attained in the divine mirror world. After breaking through the spatial seal, the first thing everyone did was to call for help from Papa of the Celestial Court through voice transmission talismans. The Moonlit Night Monarch wanted to stop them, but it was already too late. The only thing she could do now was to pick up the pace and snatch the evil slaying sword from Lin's hands. She turned toward Su Xiaolan and the others with a dangerous smile on her face. "You're not coming out to fight me? Very well, then I'll start with your friend." How could an opponent who could only roll around like a turtle shell protect his teammates? The Moonlit Night Monarch wanted to use this method to force Lin out of his turtle shell and stop her at all costs. She believed that with Lin's character, he would never abandon his friends. As expected, the green turtle shell began to tremble violently. However, to the Moonlit Night True Monarch's surprise, the turtle shell didn't disappear. It only opened a hole, and then threw out an energy ball from the hole, whistling towards her. The turtle shell quickly fled into the distance. The Moonlit Night Monarch was suddenly struck by a sense of boundless peril. That was the danger of death. True moon body protection. The Moonlit Night Monarch unleashed her most powerful protective ability without any hesitation. The full moon in the sky disappeared and instantly appeared on her body, wrapping her body in the strongest full moon. The energy ball cracked. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly occurred. Rumble! The blue explosive energy engulfed everything in its surroundings. It was as violent as a tsunami, as vast as the ocean, and as limitless and endless. The domain of the divine Tao that the Moonlit Night Monarch had unleashed was instantly pulverized by the terrifying energy imbued within the explosion. That's right, in the face of the Moonlit Night Monarch's threat, Lin didn't withdraw from his turtle shell state. Instead, he immediately tossed a deep-sea superbomb toward the Moonlit Night Monarch. The deep-sea superbomb was an energy core formed from two high-density water veins that had been compressed for over 100,000 years, then fused with the power of the divine Tao of Lan Xingyang, one of the most powerful beings in the Spirit Fish clan. After being activated by Lin, This item could unleash a full-force attack comparable to that of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. When he had delivered the gift, there was a note on the note that anyone who wasn't a Tao integration stage super mighty figure had to maintain a safe distance of 50 kilometers from this bomb. And Lin definitely wouldn't be able to maintain a safe distance of 50 kilometers, but his classmates could. In order to avoid harming innocent people, he had to get Su Xiaolan and the others to escape to a safe distance of 50 kilometers. What happened just now was the best opportunity. It wasn't an opportunity to surrender. Instead, it was an opportunity to launch an attack. Hence, Lin didn't run away. Instead, he maintained his turtle shell state as he fled into the distance in order to defend himself against the terrifying shockwaves of the explosion. The terrifying power of the explosion rocked the heavens and tore through the heavens. Heaven and earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers was engulfed by the boundless energy. It engulfed the moonlit night monarch, who was at the center of the explosion, and also engulfed Lin. Everything engulfed by the blue energy was pulverized. Not only that, but the area within a radius of over 250 kilometers was instantly transformed into a vast ocean. Lin. All of the students were knocked flying by the shockwaves of the explosion, and they yelled out Lin's name. This explosion was far too terrifying, and they couldn't help but be concerned about Lin's situation. Tears welled up in Su Xiaolan's eyes as she gripped the inky black turtle shell in front of her chest with a concerned expression. "You should have told me earlier. If you had told me you were going to use this weapon, I would have given you my heavenly star dark armor." Lin had forgotten about this because he was too nervous. Otherwise, he would be invincible wherever he went with his heavenly star dark armor and deep sea super bomb. The terrifying energy was still wreaking havoc in the distance. Heaven and earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers had been transformed into a vast ocean. Dabai stared blankly at the ball of terrifying blue energy and murmured to himself, "Did Big Brother and blow up his large water ball? Why is it so terrifying? Woof." No, Giant Lin once received a gift from Lan Xingyang, the leader of the Spirit Fish clan. It's called the Deep Sea Super Bomb. He must have used the Deep Sea Super Bomb just now, Tina explained. She was aware of this matter. Deep Sea Super Bomb? Dabai drew a sharp intake of breath as he looked at the boundless ocean before him. This is the first time I've seen a bomb that can create an ocean. Woof! Xianyuan Cheng's body trembled with excitement as a scorching light appeared in his eyes. It's perfect. The perfect fusion of the power of yin and yang was able to create such a smooth and harmonious explosion. Everyone's expressions darkened upon hearing this. What the hell was a smooth and harmonious explosion? The power of the ocean divine Tao gradually dissipated. There was a beautiful green light on the surface of the turbulent ocean. A figure lay on top of a cracked turtle shell, panting heavily as the waves rolled up and down. His white robe was in tatters, and his skin was either charred black or cracked, all of which were indicative of just how powerful that explosion had been. That was way too terrifying. Even though I was far away from the epicenter of the explosion and had unleashed my body of the war god and my evading turtle technique, I was still severely wounded. Lin spoke with fear lingering in his heart. For a split second, he thought he was going to be killed by the explosion. He wondered if the moonlit night monarch hadn't been killed by the explosion. It couldn't be that not even a speck of her remained, right? Lin turned toward the spot where the moonlit night monarch had been. Chapter 11-12. Lin looked up at the spot where the moonlit night monarch had been standing. The sun shone on the boundless ocean. The water and the sky connected, and the mist dissipated. There was nothing there. "It's over," Lin heaved a sigh of relief as a victorious smile appeared on his face. The moonlit night monarch was very powerful. From the fact that she was able to easily break through Lin's divine body and force Lin to use his most powerful defensive divine ability, she was actually more powerful than the Dark Night Monarch, palace leader Qing Li, Laden, and Chen Hao. It was a pity that she didn't even get a chance to display her true skills before Enlin ruthlessly ended the entire game. Little Xie, I fought the Moonlit Night Monarch head-on just to stop you from leaving. Are you touched? Enlin pulled out his evil slaying sword with a smile. The evil slaying sword didn't bicker with Enlin this time. Instead, it merely replied with a cold and didn't deny Enlin's question. Enlin knew that the evil slaying sword's favorability toward him had definitely increased significantly. With this in mind, tears streamed down his face. Only he knew just how difficult it was to increase the evil slaying sword's favorability toward him. He raised the evil slaying sword high into the air and couldn't help but praise. Ah, little Xie, your inky black sword is like the purest black under the sunlight, so pure that there isn't a single flaw on it. Your slender body is the most seductive body among all swords, and it dazzles me. The evil slaying sword trembled upon hearing this, and it couldn't help but flare up in rage. Are you trying to disgust me to death? The touching atmosphere was instantly ruined by the insensitive Enlin. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face, and he was just about to sheath his sword when a strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. Be careful! The evil slaying sword also yelled at this moment. Whoosh! An extremely dazzling crescent moon erupted from the bottom of the ocean, slicing the entire ocean in half. Heaven and earth lost their luster, the ocean was displaced, and space was torn apart. The broken turtle shell that Enlin was lying on was also cut open by the crescent moon that suddenly appeared. In the end, the white moonlight, which was imbued with a terrifying sharpness, fell upon Enlin's evil-slaying sword arm, and the sound of flesh and bone being torn apart erupted. Amidst the spurting of blood, he saw an arm separated from the body fly into the sky, still holding a black longsword. An intense pain began to spread throughout his body. Enlin couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. His body suddenly jumped up, wanting to catch the arm that was flying into the sky. However, a black figure leaped out from the ocean at an even faster speed and snatched the evil-slaying sword from the severed arm. When Enlin saw the figure that suddenly appeared, he suddenly came to a realization. The Moonlit Night Monarch was still alive. She actually survived after taking a deep-sea superbomb. Not only that, the first thing that came to her mind after she was injured was not to escape, but to use the opportunity to sink to the bottom of the sea, hide her aura, and wait for the opportunity to launch the most fatal attack. This enemy was too terrifying. The Moonlit Night Monarch's black dress was in tatters, and there were many wounds all over her body. Not only that, but she was also missing an arm and a leg. Her voluptuous wings were charred black, and her once perfect body had been reduced to an extremely wretched state. Blood mixed with seawater flowed from her body. I've won. The Moonlit Night Monarch's voice was gentle as she looked down at Enlin with her sword in hand. Her eyes were as gentle as the moon, and even though she had been severely injured, there was not a single trace of panic in her eyes. Is that so? Black mist began to revolve around Enlin's body as his aura climbed steadily. Origin energy of the Netherworld. The Moonlit Night Monarch's expression darkened slightly as she sensed this astonishing aura. She didn't think that Enlin would still be able to unleash a mystic technique even after being so severely injured. A dazzling golden light appeared in Enlin's palm, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged violently before transforming into golden particles of light that converged in his palm. This was one of Enlin's trump cards, the god of war heaven-blasting cannon. The Moonlit Night Monarch could sense that she had been locked onto, and she raised her evil-slaying sword high into the air as she forced herself to take a deep breath. At a time like this, the best course of action was to forcefully interrupt her opponent's technique. Evil sword technique, dark ceiling monarch. A clear cry sounded. Whoosh! An illusory yet imposing black shadow appeared behind the woman. She slashed her evil-slaying sword toward Enlin. A vast sword might transformed into an inky black canopy that descended upon Unlin, imbued with an extremely powerful sealing power. Unlin's body trembled uncontrollably at the sight of this powerful sword technique. F***CK. I can't dodge this. This B***TCH's attack is far too fast, giving him no chance to prepare his god of war heaven-blasting cannon. At this critical juncture, a familiar white light flashed in the air. A petite figure suddenly appeared, and she raised her hands toward the inky black canopy. Divine technique, energy source swap. A white halo of light suddenly appeared, enshrouding her and Unlin, forming an extremely powerful barrier that resisted the overwhelming power. Rumble, the space around them tremored violently. All of the dark energy that entered the white halo of light transformed into a gentle and harmless energy that filled the entire white halo of light. Unlin discovered that there was even more energy within the white halo of light that he could use, and it flowed relentlessly into the spell technique of the god of war heaven-blasting cannon. He was astonished. Was she disintegrating the energy imbued within the Moonlit Night Monarch's technique before converting it into her own energy? That was way too terrifying. The Moonlit Night Monarch's expression shifted slightly upon seeing this, and she immediately spread open her wings and fled into the distance. She was severely injured and could only unleash less than 50% of her power, so she was in no position to engage them in battle. Hence, she was extremely decisive in her escape. However, right at this moment, an extremely scorching aura suddenly erupted from up ahead. The clear cry of a vermilion bird erupted into the heavens. A white holy flame slashed through the air, and it was as if a vermilion bird had descended upon the world as it hurtled toward the Moonlit Night Monarch. Su Xiaolan had also sprung into action. Unlin was the one who had injured her, so how could she allow him to escape so easily? This sword strike was not weak, and the Moonlit Night Monarch couldn't ignore it. She had no choice but to falter and slash the powerful holy flame vermilion bird in half with her sword. However, it was also during this crucial moment that she faltered. Boom! An extremely dazzling golden light erupted into the sky with earth-shattering power. Unlin stood atop his turtle shell and let loose an almighty roar as he unleashed his god of war heaven-blasting cannon. Kamehameha technique. The earth-shattering energy cannon obliterated everything in its path with an unstoppable force. The Moonlit Night Monarch was just about to unleash a spell technique when boundless grief suddenly welled up in her heart, and tears welled up in her eyes. At the same time, her lower abdomen began to throb with intense pain, and she was struck by an extremely strong sense of diarrhea. Not only was her upper abdomen wet, but her lower abdomen was also wet. The sudden and strange impact caused her reaction to slow down for a moment. It was during this instant that the Moonlit Night Monarch missed the best opportunity to react, and her body was engulfed by the terrifying god of war heaven-blasting cannon. Chapter 11:13. The golden pillar of light from the god of war heaven-blasting cannon extended into infinity and beyond, as if it were going to pierce through the entire heavens. Tina and Su Xiaolan could also clearly sense just how terrifying this attack was. After all, the God of War heaven-blasting cannon was a spell technique that could blast a return-to-void intermediate stage mighty figure into smithereens, so it should have no problem dealing with a severely wounded mighty figure at the return-to-void pinnacle stage. Sure enough, an inky black sword fell from the sky. The golden light gradually dissipated. A heavily wounded woman with black feathers fell from the sky. Accompanied by a few fluttering black feathers in the air, she looked like a deity that had fallen into the mortal world. Unlin was also completely exhausted, and he panted heavily as he lay on his turtle shell. He swallowed a 7th-grade immortal pill to replenish his energy and blood. Su Xiaolan retrieved her evil-slaying sword. Meanwhile, Tina charged toward the Moonlit Night Monarch and slashed her Heart Lotus Ice sword toward the Moonlit Night Monarch, intending to finish her off. The Moonlit Night Monarch suddenly opened her eyes, and she crushed a spherical object with 4 pairs of wings in her hand. A black energy barrier instantly enshrouded her body. Tina's sword strike struck the black energy barrier, but it was unable to even leave a single scratch on it. Everyone's expressions shifted. They didn't think that the moonlit night monarch would still be able to put up such a tough fight. And Lin was extremely depressed. He was already lying on the ground, but the moonlit night monarch was still able to fight? Was this woman a cockroach? Within the black ball, the moonlit night monarch stared intently at the evil-slaying sword in Su Xiaolan's hand. A chill ran down Su Xiaolan's spine, and she gripped the black armor on her chest tightly. Just as everyone thought that another vicious battle was about to erupt, the moonlit night monarch's black ball suddenly tore through space and disappeared into a spatial passageway. Tina's mouth gaped open with incredulity. She escaped. Su Xiaolan heaved a heavy sigh of relief as she held tightly onto her evil-slaying sword. That black ball is most likely the moonlit night monarch's life-saving trump card. She was actually forced into a corner, Su Xiaolan sighed with emotion. The moonlit night monarch's final unwilling gaze was quite terrifying. Although the enemy had run away, everyone still did not let down their guard. They were on guard against the enemy's return. Enlin, are you all right? Su Xiaolan flew toward Enlin and picked up his severed arm. I'm fine. Enlin forced a smile onto his face. He had already taken an immortal pill, so his condition was stabilized for now. At this moment, everyone flew toward Enlin with concern on their faces. Luo Ziping, Miao Tian, and the other lackeys all gathered around. Apart from worry, there was also a hint of reverence and fervor in their eyes. Their classmate had just chased away the renowned monarch of the Dark-Winged tribe right in front of them. How could they not be excited to witness such a legendary event? Can you reattach it? Su Xiaolan turned to look at Tina. Aside from being proficient in spatial spell techniques, Tina was also extremely proficient in healing. No problem, leave it to me. Tina patted her little chest and lifted Enlin's arm. Then, she flew over to him and began to stitch up the severed limb. In this world, it was not unusual for severed limbs to regrow, let alone reattaching a severed limb. Enlin didn't get to experience the feeling of being a one-armed hero for long before his left arm was reattached. The next step was to lie on the coffin and recover. Kacha! The sound of space cracking could be heard. Everyone's heart jolted with shock, thinking that the moonlit night monarch was making a comeback. They all gathered around Enlin and drew their weapons as they stared at the spatial rift with hostile expressions. A cold-faced man in a purple imperial robe walked out. He was slightly taken aback when he saw the people pulling out their weapons and glaring at him with hostility. Everyone was also slightly taken aback. They didn't think that Emperor Ziwei would be here. A heavy silence ensued. Emperor Ziwei turned to Enlin and broke the silence in a friendly manner. Enlin is dead? Everyone. Enlin. The system god of war heaven-blasting cannon mission had been completed and had disappeared. But Enlin was 100% sure that Emperor Ziwei was still on the list of people who hated him to the core. He's not dead. He's still recovering, Enlin replied with difficulty. Emperor Ziwei nodded in praise. As expected of the small war god of the celestial court, even the moonlit night monarch was defeated by you. You've grown very quickly. He looked around at everyone and only unleashed a mystic technique to search for the moonlit night monarch's escape route. Unfortunately, Emperor Ziwei's brows furrowed deeply after searching through the area. Strange, why can't there be any spatial trajectories or energy fluctuations? Could it be an extremely high-level escape tool? Emperor Ziwei's eyes flashed as he carefully surveyed his surroundings, but he couldn't find any traces of the enemy's escape route. This was a little awkward. He couldn't just come here to ask if Enlin was dead or not, could he? He had to do something to make sure he didn't feel awkward. Emperor Ziwei made his way over to Enlin with a smile on his face. Long time no see, Mr. Enlin. Long time no see, Senior Ziwei. Enlin also greeted him with a smile, but he was cursing in his heart. "Ziwei, you bastard! Give me back my inheritance!" Ziwei replied with a nonchalant expression. The moonlit night monarch must have a strong motive for her sudden attack. "Did she say anything to you?" Unlin shook his head. "She didn't say anything. She just said that the evil slaying sword belongs to the Dark Wing tribe and that she wants it back." "Senior Ziwei, do you know anything about the evil slaying sword?" Now that he thought about it, the evil slaying sword was a weapon that Emperor Ziwei had left on Earth to nurture. Based on this situation, Emperor Ziwei was the previous owner of the evil slaying sword. Emperor Ziwei replied honestly, "I don't know what the evil slaying sword is either. I stole it from a Dark Wing monarch I killed. All I know is that it's an immortal tool at the pinnacle of the immortal stage, but it's missing something, so it hasn't been upgraded to a divine tool. I thought it couldn't become an artifact because it lacked a powerful sword spirit. That's why I left it on Earth to tame and nurture it. Who would have thought that the Dark Wing tribe would risk antagonizing Her Majesty Nuwa in order to take it back?" Emperor Ziwei stared at the evil-slaying sword in Su Xiaolan's hand with a thoughtful expression. "Now that I think about it, the evil-slaying sword is even more important to the Dark Wing tribe than I had imagined." It seemed to have sensed Emperor Ziwei's gaze. The evil-slaying sword trembled lightly before flying from Su Xiaolan's hand to Enlin's side. Everyone faltered upon seeing this. This was the first time that Enlin had experienced the evil-slaying sword's reliance and trust, and he was extremely touched. "Little Xie, you really are. Shut up. Let me calm down." The evil-slaying sword's cold and proud voice sounded. This was the first time that Enlin had heard the evil-slaying sword speak in such a humane manner. Emperor Ziwei didn't take offense. Instead, a warm smile appeared on his face. "Mr. Enlin, I haven't received a reward for your outstanding performance at the Immortal Spirit Tower, so I've prepared a reward for you." Enlin's body trembled. Chapter 11:14. My God! What did I just hear? Emperor Ziwei wants to give me a reward? Why would he be so kind? It's not an iron fist of love, is it? Enlin was astonished. Emperor Ziwei's chest constricted at the sight of Enlin's astonished expression. "What? You're not happy that I'm giving you a reward?" "No. I'm just happy." Enlin forced a fake smile onto his face. When the reward that he had been longing for suddenly arrived, he felt like he was in a dream. He kept wondering if this was a scam, after all. He had obtained this reward by beating up Emperor Ziwei. Enlin's name seemed to have first spread across the Celestial Court and even across the entire Tai Chu continent after beating up Emperor Ziwei. A Dao integration stage true god was beaten up by a soul formation stage cultivator. Even though this was quite a special event in the Immortal Spirit Tower, it was still quite an unheard-of event. Perhaps Emperor Ziwei had stabbed Enlin in the back several times already. After all, the system wouldn't lie to him. Emperor Ziwei took a glance at Enlin's fake smile. It was so obvious that it was a fake smile. Was this a taunt? Or was this a provocation? He didn't want to give Enlin a reward, but he had accomplished nothing here, so it would be quite embarrassing for him to give Enlin a reward. Not only would that alleviate the awkwardness, but it would also help him build up his image. Emperor Ziwei paused momentarily before deciding to ignore Enlin's fake smile. He extended a hand, and a ball of white light appeared in his palm. "I have the title of Master of all Stars, Grand Master of all creations, Master of heaven and earth, and have mastered thousands upon thousands of immortal skills. However, the one I am most proud of is still the star deduction art. I can pass on this core legacy to you. Of course, the star divination technique is very dependent on talent. How much you can attain will be up to you." Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. Even Enlin was dumbstruck. This inheritance! What an extravagant gift! The star divination technique could be said to be one of Emperor Ziwei's core inheritances. This was a precious gift that countless mighty figures could only dream of receiving. Even if he didn't have much talent, learning some superficial knowledge would be extremely useful. Emperor Ziwei was very pleased with everyone's expressions, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Don't get too worked up just yet. I still have a second option, which is to give you a second-grade immortal pill. This is extremely beneficial to your cultivation. A second-grade immortal pill would cost at least 1,000,000 spirit stones, and even a few million spirit stones. Miao Tian, Zhong Yongyan, and the others were all dumbstruck upon hearing these rewards. Were they really living in the same world as Enlin? It was like a person who had just finished carrying bricks and suddenly saw two people chatting. Someone said indifferently, "I'll teach you the 18 dragons subduing palms, or I'll give you 1 billion. Choose one." The other person was vexed and didn't know what to choose, flipped the table. What did I do wrong? Why do I have to watch this? He didn't care what the students were thinking. Enlin would be lying if he said he wasn't tempted by Emperor Ziwei's two choices. One was a spell technique inheritance, while the other was a material reward. This was an extremely difficult choice to make. First of all, Emperor Ziwei's star divination technique wasn't guaranteed to be obtained. It also depended on one's comprehension ability. If one's comprehension ability wasn't good enough, then they could only do a few blind fortune-telling and fool idiots. Furthermore, Enlin's divine simulation technique was also an extremely powerful divination technique. Even though it came with a price, it was extremely bad *SS. The two techniques actually conflicted with one another. If he chose an immortal pill, then it would be more practical. No one would complain about having too many immortal pills. However, Filthy Tycoon Enlin didn't lack money at the moment, so he could buy any immortal pills he wanted. There were countless opportunities to buy immortal pills, but there was only one chance for Emperor Ziwei to make a move. Thus, Enlin uttered a sentence that no one had expected. "Enlin, Emperor Ziwei, I don't want either of the two options." Everyone was dumbstruck, wondering if they had heard incorrectly. King thought about it for so long, only to say you don't want it? Emperor Ziwei was also dumbstruck. What did you say? Su Xiaolan spoke in a panicked voice. Enlin, calm down. It would be a waste if you didn't want this. Don't tell me that your brain was blown up by the super deep water bomb you tossed at us? This was a reasonable speculation. Enlin's lips twitched as he explained. I'm not saying that I don't want either of the two options. I just want to ask if Emperor Ziwei can change the reward. I want Emperor Ziwei to do me a favor. Emperor Ziwei's interest was piqued. Oh? Tell me, what do you want me to help you with? Enlin smiled. I know. You have a renowned identity as the #1 tool refinement master of the Celestial Court, am I right? Emperor Ziwei nodded with an indifferent expression. That's right. I want you to forge a divine tool for me, Enlin said in a straightforward manner. Emperor Ziwei's face convulsed. What? Of course, I'll provide the materials myself. All you need to do is help me forge it, Enlin added. Emperor Ziwei came to his senses upon hearing this. He had almost been scared senseless by Enlin. He didn't want an immortal pill, but *King divine tool? Did he really think he was an idiot? Thankfully, he said he had to provide the materials himself, which made sense. It would only cost around a few million spirit stones to forge the divine tool, which was within an acceptable range. However, his pupils soon contracted in shock. You've already gathered the materials to forge a divine tool? That's a lot of divine tier items. Divine tier items were extremely precious, and even Dao integration stage super mighty figures would drool over them. A soul formation stage cultivator had gathered enough materials to forge a divine tool? This sent waves of shock surging through Emperor Ziwei's heart. Enlin was so young, but he was way too frightening. Not only was Emperor Ziwei astonished, but all of the students aside from Xiaolan were also dumbstruck. Immortal tools were already very powerful, but now they were talking about a legendary divine tool. Those were treasures that were revered as sect treasures even among the 4 great sects of the Kingdom of the 9 States. Unlin smiled. I'll bring out the divine tier items for you to see right now. His storage ring flashed as he spoke, and one divine tier item after another appeared, all of which were exuding extremely powerful energy fluctuations. Golden Sun Chaos Stone, Sea Essence Vital Tree, Deceased Emperor Bone, Ascension Tier, Heaven and Earth Jade Pendant, Sea Heart Stone. Emperor Ziwei's expression became a little dazed as he stared at the divine tier items before him. After a short pause, he couldn't help but touch the divine tier items before him with an entranced expression. What pure divine tier items! I can sense an aura of age from them, but they're extremely intact. They must have been kept very well, right? Unlin nodded. These were divine tier items that the high priests of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe and the Spirit Fish Clan had collected for countless years, and they had been carefully stored in the tomb this entire time. Not only that, but they had also been nurtured in a special way, so they were naturally pure. Emperor Ziwei, what kind of divine tool do you think we can forge with these divine tier items? Unlin asked curiously. Let me have a look first. Emperor Ziwei eagerly touched the divine tier items. Chapter 11:15. Oh, this is amazing, this texture, so hard, so thick, and it's so long. Is this condensed water? It's imbued with such terrifying true intent of the ocean? Is this a tear? A sense of sorrow welled up in my heart. Emperor Ziwei analyzed the divine objects that Unlin had summoned, and his face was flushed with excitement. That's right, these divine objects were so precious that even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would become excited. Emperor Ziwei held the golden chaos stone in his hand. This is a metal type yang type divine object. It can be refined and molded as the main body of a divine tool. He then turned to the dead emperor's bone. This bone is the essential Tao bone of the West Sea dead emperor, right? It's imbued with extremely powerful death intent realm and essential power of death. It can be used as the Tao realm and sharpness of a weapon. As for that tear, it's a water-type divine object and can be used as the core of a divine tool. The tear of emotion is a heartless object, and it can elevate the divine tool into a heartless weapon. Sea Essence Vital Wood is a divine object constructed from the 3 elements of wood, fire, and lightning. It can be used to guide and amplify one's power. Emperor Ziwei turned to the blue, rectangular rock before him. This is a vastly renowned divine object, the Sea Heart Stone. It's a crystallization of the power of the earth and the ocean. It's a top-tier container for nurturing weapons, and it can be used as a cultivation medium for divine tools. Unlin was more and more astonished as he listened. As expected of the number 1 tool refinement master of the Celestial Court, Emperor Ziwei was able to identify the essence of all these divine objects after analyzing them. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning. Emperor Ziwei turned to Unlin with a peculiar expression. I don't know if I'm mistaken, but I feel like these things are very suitable for you. What a coincidence! Unlin was dumbstruck. He really hadn't thought about this before. Now that he thought about it, these divine objects couldn't be tailor-made for him, could they? Perhaps this is the will of the heavens. Unlin repressed his urge to give a perfunctory reply. Emperor Ziwei held a black and white jade pendant in his hand, and a hint of confusion appeared in his eyes. This thing gives people a very mysterious feeling. I can't understand it. Unlin's expression turned cold when he saw this. Emperor Ziwei was holding the jade pendant of heaven and earth in his hand. This was a divine item that Unlin had obtained after slaying the power left behind by the ancient heavenly fiend Celestial. Who would have thought that even the number 1 tool refinement master of the Celestial Court would be unable to decipher it? Unlin thought back to the information he had obtained using his divine inspection technique and explained, the white of this jade pendant represents the sky and the black as the earth. It's extremely profound and exquisite, and one can fuse a myriad of transformations into the jade pendant. Emperor Ziwei's hands trembled involuntarily as he held the jade pendant. This is actually a Tao vessel divine object? His expression changed as he looked at the jade pendant in his hand in shock. What's a Tao vessel divine object? Unlin was slightly puzzled. He had only been cultivating for a few years. Strictly speaking, he was still a novice cultivator. He had never heard of such a term before. Emperor Ziwei explained, Tao vessel divine objects are extremely rare even among divine objects. It's said that they can perfectly fuse with the user's divine Tao and unleash the true power of Tao. Not only that, but the divine tool would also possess a divine nature with it, and its potential for growth would be infinitely expanded. Unlin and his friends were all dumbstruck. This item sounded extremely bad *SS. Unlin felt like his trip to the tomb had been extremely rewarding. Treasures, battleships, inheritances. He felt like he had instantly reached the pinnacle of his life. Emperor Ziwei was extremely excited. Mr. Unlin, you've made the wisest choice by asking me to forge this divine tool for you. In the entire celestial court, only I have the ability to forge this divine tool. Emperor Ziwei's hands were starting to itch. I feel like this divine tool will become an intermediate rank divine tool once it's forged, or perhaps even higher. Emperor Ziwei was very excited, and a peculiar flush had appeared on his cold and stern face. Emperor Ziwei, you're willing to forge this divine tool for me? Unlin asked. I'm willing. Emperor Ziwei replied in a resolute voice. Unlin, then the price, it's free. Emperor Ziwei waved a hand. Unlin was extremely elated, and he clapped his hands together. It's a deal. The matter of the divine tool had finally been settled. If a normal immortal wanted to ask Emperor Ziwei to forge a spirit tool for them, Emperor Ziwei wouldn't even bother with them. However, the opportunity to forge a divine tool was extremely rare, and each opportunity was extremely precious. This was an extremely rare experience for Emperor Ziwei, so why wouldn't he go through with it? Senior Ziwei, you won't accidentally damage the divine tool and mess up the forging process, will you? Unlin was suddenly a little worried at the sight of Emperor Ziwei's smile. Emperor Ziwei's expression darkened. Are you questioning the skills of the number 1 tool refinement master of the Celestial Court? I wouldn't dare. Unlin hurriedly replied. Currently, Emperor Ziwei was the only one in the entire Celestial Court who could forge a divine tool for him. Apparently, all of the divine tools of the Emperors, including the Celestial Arch, had been forged by him. His reputation and skills were definitely above average. The Celestial Court was also very rich. Tao integration stage super mighty figures like the Divine Bat Emperor were so poor that they couldn't even afford a divine tool. However, all of the emperors of the Celestial Court already had a divine tool. After summarizing the divine tools you've given me, there are a few options for forging a divine tool. The first is a divine cauldron of yin and yang, the second is a divine sword of slaughter, and the third is a dagger of sure kill. What type of divine tool do you want to forge? Emperor Ziwei asked. Unlin thought for a long time. I'm a super bad *SS sword immortal, so I should forge a divine sword. But I already have little Xie, and I'm a very loyal person, so I'll pass on a divine sword. The evil-slaying sword shuddered lightly in his storage ring. A divine cauldron doesn't look cool enough. Let's forge a dagger. Unlin made the final decision. Just like that, Unlin decided on the category of the divine tool. Emperor Ziwei and Unlin established a contract of trust. This was a contract that restricted the blacksmith's integrity. Any violation of this contract would result in a backlash to the blacksmith's Tao heart, and it could effectively prevent the blacksmith from skimping on materials. As an emperor, Emperor Ziwei couldn't be bothered to establish a contract like this. However, divine tools were different. They were items that even Tao integration stage super mighty figures coveted, so it was only right to be cautious. Thus, the two of them established a contract of trust. Thus, everything was taken care of. Emperor Ziwei bade farewell to Enlin and the others before returning to the celestial court with the divine tools in his hands. Su Xiaolan and the others also carried Enlin's coffin back to Xiao Chao's wedding. Who would have thought that classmate Enlin would have already prepared a divine tool while we were still worrying about immortal tools? Xianyuan Cheng was genuinely envious. Class captain, we're still worrying about spirit tools. Miao Tian clutched her glass heart that was about to shatter. She had clearly been dealt quite a heavy blow. Big brother and really is invincible. He already has a divine tool at such a young age. Who will be able to stop him in the future? Luo Ziping also sighed with emotion. Enlin lay on the coffin and listened to everyone's envious and exclamations, but his heart was as calm as still water. He would be invincible with a divine tool? No, this was only a prerequisite for him to progress to the Return to Void stage. Chapter 11:16. The clown elder of the 4-9 Immortal sect was going to hold a wedding. This was another grand occasion for the cultivation world. During this period of time, the 4-9 Immortal sect was the center of attention. After arriving at the 4-9 Immortal sect, Enlin's body was still injured, but he was already able to get out of his coffin. On the day of the wedding, countless immortals from all over the world had arrived. A series of ferocious mutant beasts lay on the ground like docile sheep. The rules of the 4-9 Immortal sect prohibited loud noises. Within the kingdom of the 9 states, the Celestial Court, the 3 super-immortal sects, the 9 Imperials, and most of the first-rate sects all sent representatives to congratulate them. Not only within the kingdom of the 9 states, but many powerful forces on the Taichu continent, such as the Creation Realm, the Western Paradise, and the Garden of Eden, also sent representatives to congratulate them. Even though this wedding wasn't as important as the grand opening of the sect, and the sect leader didn't come in person, all of the gifts arrived on time. As long as the gifts were here, that was enough. A wide smile blossomed on Enlin's face as he looked at the endless stream of gifts. The entire sect was in a festive mood. Bai Yao's mother, Bai Muyu, also came to congratulate them with the White Fox tribe. This was the 3rd time she had attended her daughter's wedding, and it felt different every time. Sect leader, there's a very special guest at the gate. He doesn't have an invitation, but he says that you definitely know him. Chu Ming, who was responsible for receiving guests, bowed to Enlin. No invitation? I know him? Don't tell me he's some random guy. Have you identified him? Enlin's brows furrowed. Chu Ming nodded. I've already identified him. He tipped me 10,000 spirit stones right off the bat. Enlin nodded. Good. I'll go have a look. Outside the gate of the 4-9 Immortal sect, a black-robed man with his face obscured stood silently on the spot. He raised his head and looked at the 4 golden word. A gust of wind blew past, and as his black robe fluttered, his slightly thin figure could be seen. Tang Shiman, who was responsible for receiving guests, looked at the black-robed man with a nervous expression. However, no matter how hard he stared, the black-robed man seemed to be separated by a layer of mist, completely unable to see his face. This is definitely a big shot who doesn't want to reveal his identity. I won't disturb him. Tang Shiman cowered and turned to receive the other guests. Are you the one who wanted to see me? Enlin walked to the door and looked at the black-robed man in front of him warily. Even with his powerful divine sense, he was unable to see through the layer of mist. The other party was either extremely powerful or had used an extremely powerful artifact to conceal their identity. The black-robed man nodded, then raised his head, tilted his head, and asked in a hoarse voice, Sect Leader Enlin, guess who I am? Enlin rolled his eyes. Don't play this game with me. You're wasting my time. If you have something to say, just say it. I'm busy. The black-robed man crossed his hands in front of him and twisted his body. He said in a hoarse voice, How can you talk to me like that? Can't your attitude be better? When Enlin saw this scene, goosebumps erupted all over his body. Was this person throwing a tantrum at him? Was he a freak? An expression of disgust and disdain finally appeared on Enlin's face. The black-robed man couldn't hold back any longer, and he immediately dispersed the mist. A pair of emerald blue eyes and a set of extremely intricate features suddenly appeared. "Big Boss Enlin, you're going too far," a clear, pleasant voice sounded. Enlin faltered upon hearing this. If the black-robed man had done that to a man, it would indeed have been very disgusting. However, it was very normal for a woman to do that. No, that wasn't the point. The point was, "Underling Lon, why are you here?" Enlin exclaimed. "Haha, are you surprised?" Lan Xiaoni clasped her hands behind her back and leaned forward to look at the man before her with a smile on her face. Enlin took a deep breath before asking in a quiet voice, "What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you that I had to keep my relationship with the Spirit Fish clan a secret?" Lan Xiaoni pouted. "That's why I came here with my face hidden. My father told me that you used up your deep-sea super bomb, so he asked me to give you a present. Also, for what I did to Xiao Chou and Bai Yao, I want to come here in person to apologize to them, as well as to give them a gift." Lan Xiaoni bit down on her lower lip as she spoke, and she stared at Enlin with determination in her eyes. It was quite clear that she had made up her mind. Enlin faltered upon hearing this. The high and mighty mermaid princess, a timid and willful woman, had mustered up the courage to come here and apologize? Enlin was a little touched by this. His underling Lon seemed to have matured a little. "All right, you can go back into the sect and continue to disguise yourself. I'll introduce you to everyone at our sect gathering tomorrow. After all, you're my underling, so you're also a member of the 4-9 Immortal sect," Enlin said with a smile. A smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face as she nodded. "All right. A member of the 4-9 Immortal sect?" She didn't know why, but after hearing this, she felt a sense of belonging in her heart. "By the way, Big Boss Enlin, my father told me to give this deep-sea super bomb to you. Due to the limited materials available, the deep-sea super bomb won't be able to be manufactured in a short time. This deep-sea super bomb is also imbued with the power of the divine Tao and can kill return to void final stage mighty figures." "All right, thank you. I'll be taking it." Enlin accepted the bomb without any hesitation. As for being able to kill return to void final stage mighty figures, he definitely wasn't going to believe that. He would just treat it as a boast. After all, the Moonlit Night Monarch was a return to void final stage mighty figure. Even the deep-sea super bomb couldn't kill her, so how could the deep-sea super bomb possibly kill her? The two of them chatted for a while longer. Lan Xiaoni snuck into the sect with Enlin. After entering the sect, she was able to do as she pleased. She walked and stopped along the way as she curiously toured around Big Boss sect to see what it was like. Perhaps it was because of Enlin's words, but Lan Xiaoni felt a sense of closeness toward the 4-9 Immortal sect. Everything she saw was pleasing to the eye, and even the ordinary-looking Tang Shiman was quite handsome. Beside the lake, she discovered a vibrant red flower singing. The song was very pleasant, but she didn't know what language it was singing in, and it was very unfamiliar to her. There was a huge dog and a white wolf chasing after each other, and they seemed to be playing some kind of game with a fluffy white snowball on their head. She also saw the little fairy and the little butterfly that she had seen before. Lan Xiaoni continued onward along the bluestone path, and a joyful smile appeared on her face at the sights she saw along the way. Before she knew it, she had arrived at a Dao Plaza. The Dao Plaza was very spacious, and there was an extremely beautiful woman in a jade dress performing a sword dance. Lan Xiaoni was a little entranced. At the same time, she really wanted to know who that woman was. Chapter 11:17. Lan Xiaoni's understanding of the 4-9 Immortal sect was limited to the descriptions on the news. "I heard that there's a sword pavilion in the 4-9 Immortal sect. Could she be the pavilion lord of the Sword Pavilion, Lu Qianhuan? Lan Xiaoni cocked her head to the side as she murmured to herself. She was using a special tool to conceal herself, so no one would be able to detect her presence. It was exactly because of this that she snuck a little closer. No, Lu Qianhuan is said to be quite a lively woman, and her clothes are a little weird too. Why would she wear such formal clothes? Lan Xiaoni finally eliminated one of the possibilities. She must be one of the 4 beauties of the 4-9 immortal sect. Lu Qianhuan has been eliminated, so she can only be Bai Ling from the Purple Star Pavilion, Su Xiaolan from the Flame Pavilion, or Su Qianyun from the Moon Pavilion. Lan Xiaoni's gossipy heart was burning with excitement, and she began to eliminate the possibilities. I heard that Bai Ling is a big sister in a flowing white dress. I heard that Su Qianyun doesn't use swords, so she's most likely. The mermaid princess' heart rate began to accelerate, and a peculiar look appeared in her eyes as she stared at the woman in the jade dress. At this moment, a crisp voice suddenly sounded from beside her. "Big sister, why are you hiding behind the tree?" "Ah!" Lan Xiaoni was just focusing her attention on the woman when a voice suddenly sounded beside her, giving her a massive fright. When he took a closer look, he discovered that there was a pretty little girl standing beside him. The little girl was extremely adorable, but she was also given a fright by Lan Xiaoni's scream, and her features paled slightly as she stumbled back a few steps. How did you see me here?" Lan Xiaoni was still in a state of shock. "How did I see you here?" The little girl cocked her head to the side. "I saw you with my eyes." Lan Xiaoni was at a loss for words as she looked into the little girl's clear eyes. Right at this moment, an extremely powerful sense of peril suddenly erupted from behind her. The immortal sword tore through the air before hurtling toward her like a bolt of lightning. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted drastically, and she immediately summoned her white ball as a shield. The green figure instantly appeared before her before grabbing the little girl with one hand and stabbing the white ball with the other. Rumble! The thunder and fire dual blades collided with the white ball, resulting in a deafening explosion. The impact of the energy even caused the ground, which had been reinforced by the array formation, to crack. Lan Xiaoni felt an overwhelming power sweep toward her, and her body was sent flying backward. "Who the hell are you? How dare you trespass into the sect's forbidden area?" the green-robed woman shouted. This woman was none other than Su Xiaolan of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Guests were prohibited from entering the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Dao Plaza, and a black-robed man who was concealing his aura was extremely suspicious. She naturally wasn't going to stand by and do nothing. Lan Xiaoni panicked after being forced back by Su Xiaolan's sword strike, and she immediately turned to flee into the distance. "Don't even think about getting away." Su Xiaolan spread her holy flame wings and chased after them. The two of them exchanged a few blows in midair, and Lan Xiaoni was on the back foot this entire time, unable to escape. A pillar of flames descended from the sky and struck the flying black-robed woman, causing her to fall to the ground. Their battle alerted the 4-9 Immortal Sect cultivators. Anlin was the first to arrive at the scene. He was completely dumbstruck by the sight of Su Xiaolan pressing her dragon sparrow sword against Lan Xiaoni's neck. "What's going on here? The main empress has captured her underling? What kind of explosive news is this? Anlin, come here. I've captured an enemy spy." Su Xiaolan made a logical deduction, but her dragon sparrow sword was still pressed against Lan Xiaoni's snowy white neck, as if she was going to end this woman's life at any moment. Lan Xiaoni had already given up on resisting, and she turned to Anlin with a pitiable expression on her face. There was a look of guilt and indignation on her face for having been exposed in advance. Anlin's head was about to explode upon seeing this. "Spare her, Xiaolan." Anlin finally extended Kang's hand and yelled. Su Xiaolan turned to look at Anlin with furrowed brows. "You know her?" Lan Xiaoni's mouth gaped open, and she was just about to yell out "Big Bossin," but she swallowed the words in the end. She didn't know if doing so would create more trouble for Enlin, so she decided to let Enlin handle the situation for safety reasons. However, what else could Enlin do? He could only muster up his courage. Xiaolan, put down your sword first. This is all a misunderstanding. This is the woman I mentioned to you before, Lan Xiaoni of the Spirit Fish clan of the West Sea. Su Xiaolan murmured, she's Lan Xiaoni? She turned to look at the black-robed woman on the ground. She had exquisite features, bright blue eyes, and was trying her best to maintain her composure, but in reality, it was very easy to see that she was scared and timid. She was indeed a top-notch beauty. Lan Xiaoni could sense an extremely powerful aura emanating from Su Xiaolan's body, and a sharp light flashed through her eyes. Her body shuddered involuntarily, and she lowered her head like a little child who had done something wrong. At this moment, Dabai, Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, and the other 4-9 Immortal Sect members also rushed over upon hearing the commotion. Su Xiaolan withdrew her longsword and extended a hand with a smile on her face. So it was all a misunderstanding. Ms. Lan Xiaoni, I've wanted to meet you for a long time. I really want to thank you for everything you've done for my Enlin. Lan Xiaoni nodded blankly before grabbing onto Xiaolan's hand and standing up. Hello. You're Ms. Su Xiaolan, right? I've heard a lot about you. Lan Xiaoni extended a friendly greeting. Dabai, Xianyuan Qing, and the others were greeted by the sight of Su Xiaolan and Lan Xiaoni happily shaking hands and chatting with one another. Seeing as the other members of the 4-9 Immortal Sect had arrived, Enlin gave them a recount of what had happened. And so on and so on, and so on. Everyone was already aware of Lan Xiaoni, and they didn't have any vendettas with her, so they quickly accepted her and introduced her to one another. Lan Xiaoni was a little overwhelmed by everyone's warm welcome. Due to the fact that she had been kidnapped, she had already mentally prepared herself to be treated coldly and even insulted. However, she didn't think that the treatment she would receive would be so different from what she had imagined. With this in mind, tears welled up in the mermaid princess' eyes, and she was moved to the point where she burst into tears again. Su Xiaolan didn't know whether to laugh or cry upon seeing this. She made her way over to Enlin and gestured to the sobbing Lan Xiaoni with her chin. Has she always been like this? Does she cry at the drop of a hat? Enlin nodded with emotion. That's right. She's very timid and she doesn't cry much. Even so, she still had the courage to risk her life to save you, Su Xiaolan said. Enlin was just about to reply when his heart suddenly jolted. This was a trap.